the Doom The Dark Ages DLC having released, here's an updated video on the full story of Doom, or rather what is considered the canon storyline in an in-game universe where that canon is all over the place. I'm a big lore enthusiast, so tangled webs of lore and story are my bread and butter. Growing up, I played the early Doom games on my family's old Windows PC and enjoyed them quite a lot, although I ended up swaying more towards Quake and Duke Nukem than I did Doom. Anyway, Doom 3 and the franchise's reboot, Doom 2016, bypassed me completely. That wasn't until lockdown of 2020 when Doom Eternal dropped, and I decided to embark on the Doom journey back when this channel was just a Let's Play channel. Now in this video we'll be covering 1993 Doom and its sequel Doom 2, Doom 64, the Lost Levels, and the explanation for these 4 games will be brief, as these games were geared more towards the gameplay rather than depth of story. We'll then do some world building for the modern games, then Doom The Dark Ages, Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, and the 2 Ancient Gods DLCs. This video is an updated version of a previous one, and it will include the new Doom Dark Ages Revelations DLC, which was an awesome add-on campaign. You'll notice that there's no Doom 3 in that list. Well, that's because Doom 3 doesn't directly follow the Doom guy, Doom Marine, Doom Slayer, whatever you want to call him, and his journey. It's more of a spin-off, but it is still technically canon to the Doom-iverse, if you will. I think that's covered everything. Oh, remember, if you're enjoying this video at any point, then please leave a like and subscribe, as it does help this video's reach. Finally, there will be obvious story spoilers for the entire Doom franchise, including the new Doom title in this video. But with all that said, let's jump in. First thing we need to do is introduce ourselves to a Marine, Corporal Flynn Taggart. In the year 2044, Taggart, who is an exceptional Marine with an outstanding service record, arrived late to a mission briefing that was being led by a Lieutenant Joshua Weems. With his battle dress muddy, Taggart said that the very mission Weems was briefing the Fox company on was done. He'd taken care of it and then he just left. Weems requested a court-martial for Taggart as he didn't appreciate being made to look like a mug in front of the company. The Colonel, Mercer, reluctantly gives Weems the approval for the court-martial, stating that Taggart is an exceptional Marine. It became very clear that Corporal Taggart had developed a habit of insubordination, and this pattern of behaviour would continue. In May 2045, Lieutenant Weems had gotten a report from a sentry at Fort Elliott that Corporal Taggart had returned to the base. This was a problem as he'd never been given authorization to leave the base in the first place. He was searched and had insurgent contraband on him, as well as some weaponry stolen from the armory. Weems wanted Corporal Taggart to be dishonorably discharged and chemically indoctrinated because he'd ruined his upcoming press coverage surrounding a mission that Taggart had just carried out on his own, stating that his father is furious, calling it an injustice. Lieutenant Weems is a nepo baby child of the director of the Department of Military Intelligence, Wesley Weems. This time, the Colonel, Mercer, denied Weems, stating that the actions of Corporal Taggart have resulted in them being able to get their hands on an insurgent encryption device. What's more is that the mission Weems was planning to send men out on was based off of faulty intel. Taggart's actions saved many lives and averted a major military catastrophe. In 2046, Corporal Taggart was sent on a solo mission to destroy an insurgent hideout. They were holed up underneath the hospital, and Taggart was sent in with mission control telling him it had been evacuated of civilians, and mowing his way through insurgents and placing explosives, he finds the insurgent bunker. They're using this hospital as a SAM site to destroy military aircraft, so placing an explosive on one of the surface-to-air missiles, he sets a countdown for the detonators and heads to the exit where evac will be waiting for him. Unfortunately, he sees the shadow of someone standing in the doorway of the hospital, a young girl who's terrified and holding her cuddly toy. Corporal Taggart tries to save her, but she's lost in the blast along with at least 12 civilians. The intel was wrong, again. Afterwards, Lieutenant Weems' father Wesley wrote to Colonel Mercer about Mercer's report on what happened during the mission at the hospital. It seems that Wesley Weems had altered the report, thereby absolving his son of any wrongdoing in the disaster that was this mission, and was trying to pin the blame onto Corporal Taggart. The report stated that Lieutenant Weems received an intel report which detailed the location of insurgents at the hospital. It detailed that civilians had been observed barricaded inside rooms at the hospital, but this is not what Taggart was told when he arrived there.
Is the site empty?
Command says yes. The bunker's underneath. We've got a green light from Central.
Mercer originally stated that Lieutenant Weems had failed to review the intel properly, and that he has a history of gross incompetence and should be relieved of duty immediately. Weems Sr. then crossed that out and fabricated a report that Taggart assaulted Lieutenant Weems. Corporal Taggart was placed under psych evaluation and was displaying severe PTSD and had survivor's guilt. He was agitated, withdrawn emotionally, and was somewhat hostile. He was offered a therapy dog, but instead wanted a domestic rabbit, which seemed to help stabilize his demeanor. He would name his beloved rabbit Daisy, and would return to active duty again. In an unknown year, Corporal Taggart was part of a unit ordered to open fire on civilians, but he refused, assaulted his commanding officer, likely Lieutenant Weems, and whilst his horrifically injured CO in a full body cast was sent to Pearl Harbor, Taggart was sent to Mars as punishment. The UAC, or the Union Aerospace Corporation, a multiplanetary conglomerate, had radioactive waste facilities there both on Mars and on Mars's 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos. Mars had been chosen as a planet for humanity to colonize. Earth had lent the moon's bases on Phobos and Deimos for the UAC to also research on and experiment with teleportation. The UAC's experiments were hit and miss. Volunteers agreed to be sent through the gateways between Phobos and Deimos, but all of them vanished or went completely crackers. Insane. Before, well, blowing up. The Marine's job was security, basically. This soldier, now a space Marine, was being punished as this job was boring. Nothing around for 50 million miles, he was stuck guarding the UAC scientists and saw absolutely zero action. So the Marine spent his days watching restricted movies in the facility's rec room. But his life was about to be flipped upside down. So not too long prior to where we are in this story, Deimos had quite simply disappeared. One day during his boring assignment, the Space Marines on Mars hear a distress call coming from Phobos. The Marine, let's call him Doom Guy from here on out, goes up to Phobos with a team of Space Marines and is ordered to guard the perimeter whilst the other Space Marines go into the facility and investigate. Over the radio, Doom Guy then hears screaming and someone inside saying to send help. Doom Guy then enters the facility armed only with a pistol and finds demonic creatures in there, and all his fellow Space Marines are now dead, having been ripped and torn apart by the monsters. Moving through the different facilities, including the nuclear plant, the toxin refinery and Phobos lab, the Doom Guy comes up against many vile, ferocious demons such as Barons of Hell. He eventually finds what the Barons were guarding, a portal, an interdimensional gateway between Phobos and Deimos. Stepping through the portal, the Doom Guy is instantly surrounded and is ambushed by demonic forces. Doom Guy notices the stench of rotten meat, and he realizes that the only way out of this base is through it. Blasting his way through the facility, the Doom Guy finds the place teeming with demons, with blood and guts all over the place. The Doom Guy does, however, just as he did on the Phobos base, find many weapons that he can use to destroy this evil, and he does so without prejudice. Entering a construction built by the demons that they call the Tower of Babel, the Doom Guy eventually comes up against the Cyber Demon, who is the demon in charge of the Deimos base. But Doom Guy realizes something. Deimos had disappeared because it was transported and now sits directly above Hell itself, with the moon being the gateway to Mars's moon bases. With no other option than to finish what his fellow Space Marines could not, the Doom Guy rappels down into Hell to fight the demons. Fighting through Hell through locations such as the House of Pain and Limbo, Doom Guy finally confronts the demon who masterminded the demonic invasion of Mars called the Spider Demon. Killing it, Doom Guy walks through a portal going back to Earth. But he finds that the demons had managed to invade Earth through the same door the Doom Guy had used to go back to Earth. They'd killed his family, his wife and son, and his pet rabbit, Daisy. Thanks to the demons' invasion of Earth, humanity had banded together in order to build huge ships, and were geared up to evacuate the planet, but the starport they were going to use in order to facilitate that evacuation was surrounded by flames, all thanks to those pesky demons. A group of soldiers try to undertake an assault on the starport but are obliterated. So the Doom Guy must step up again and be the hero for humanity. Entering, he takes out a load more demons and activates the force field, thus allowing the remaining humans to make their escape, but the Doom Guy has nothing else to do but wait for his demise, happy with what he'd managed to do in saving what was left of humanity from their extinction. This death would not come though, as Earth Control sent a message from space which stated that the source of the invasion was the Doom Guy's home city. So he peels himself off of the ground and goes home to continue the fight. Arriving, he finds that the demons have taken over most of the city, and Doom Guy fights them, clearing as many of them as he can from the city in an attempt to find the location that the invasion originated from. After battling against a spider demon and a cyber demon, he eventually finds another portal to Hell, and realizing that there's no way to close the portal from Earth's side, the Doom Guy once again ventures into Hell. Fighting his way through Hell's demons, Doomguy finally confronts a giant demon known as the Icon of Sin, with a goat-like head and a brain that spawns demons. Firing a few rockets into the brain, the Icon of Sin is destroyed and Doomguy stops another demon invasion, and he thinks about how humanity is going to rebuild. But again, that's not the end of it. The Doomguy now, quite understandably having lost everything and battled unthinkable monstrosities, was suffering from PTSD, and no amount of doctors and their therapy would help. He was still filled with an unrelenting rage and wanted to kill even more demons. You see, back on Mars something had survived. A creature which, because of the high radiation levels, had mutated into something grotesque called the Mother of All Demons. She had the ability to resurrect the demons killed by Doomguy, and they become slightly more powerful. So the Doomguy was sent to Phobos, as upon receiving a very weak signal from Phobos, the UAC had detected another invasion attempt was going to take place. First mowing his way through the demons in the UAC base, Doomguy once again steps through a portal to Hell and comes face to face with the Mother of All Demons. As expected, he puts her out of her misery, and the Doomguy looks up at the sky, triumphant once again. This time, Doomguy chooses to remain in Hell, in order to ensure that no demon ever rises again, closing the portal from inside. But, at some point, the Doomguy finds himself stranded outside of Hell, and on a distant dwarf planet called Sedna, on which sits another UAC base, absolutely teeming with demons. He was sent there by the Sister Resurrector, who is the sister of the Mother of All Demons, and she's mad. She wants revenge for the death of her sister. Since Doomguy was causing total carnage in Hell, she kicked him out. Working his way through the base, he enters Hell again and takes the fight to the Sister Resurrector, and she reunites with her sister in death. Afterwards, the Doomguy has a grim vision of a path of perpetual torment, a path through doom. And that concludes what are widely considered to be the canon events of the Doomguy's past leading up to the newer games. So let's continue on by doing a bit of world building. So, millions of years before we see it, Argent D'Nur was a lifeless planet. That was until one pretty significant event in which a large shard of crystal crashed into the planet, and from it came creatures known as wraiths. These wraiths then brought life and vitality to Argent D'Nur. This event, known as the Wraith Call, echoed across the land and life began to evolve on the planet. First came the Ancestrals, and they were large feral beasts, and then came man. The Argenta, who became the wild-blooded tribes. They discovered something they called the Secret of the Sword. They also viewed the wraiths as deities, calling them the First Ones, and power would be drawn from them, being called Sentinel Energy. The Argenta then drove the Ancestrals from the lands and built huge towering cities. Civilization grew, and they crowned their first king, or Miro, and they built a large cathedral of reflection and then formed the Order of the Deag, priests that would pay tribute to the wraiths. As for contribution to Argenta society, two paths would be chosen, the path of the sword or the path of the alchemist, with both being viewed or considered to be of equal honor and value to Argenta society. Naturally, there came a point where other humans living on the planet, the barbarians, would try to forcefully take the land of the Argenta, so the heart of the Argenta Legion was formed, calling themselves the Night Sentinels, with only those of Sentinel blood being worthy of becoming a Sentinel. The Night Sentinels would also serve as the protectors of the Wraiths. It's said that in times of desperate need, Sentinel shamans would approach the giant shard, now called the World Spear, and would have their souls judged. Gatekeepers stood at the entrance to the World Spear, and would cut down those deemed not worthy. Those that were worthy would return with a shard of the World Spear itself, brimming with power. These crystals could be used to power advanced technology, with them being a limitless energy source. Argent D'Nur would then enter a time of grief. A king called King Etrex ruled at this point, and this period of Argenta history also saw the arrival of porcelain-looking godlike creatures called the Maykrs. Due to their knowledge and appearing to be deities rather than worshipping the wraiths, who the Argenta felt they worshipped out of fear rather than adoration and awe, abandoned their faith in the wraiths, and they placed the wraiths into a long sleep inside something known as the Elemental Sepulchre. The Argenta began to worship the Maykrs as their gods instead, and this was based on the belief that in death, the Argenta would have eternal rest in the blessed Maker realm of Urdak. One city that had been built was an ethereal floating city called the Holy City of Aratum, a city sanctuary that was home to relics and texts from the Age of the Ancestrals, which are preserved despite worship of the wraiths being outlawed due to the Argentus' new devotion to the Maykrs. The Maykrs also bestowed upon the people great strides in technology and strength. Then came the time of ascension. The Argenta conquered many other worlds and planets through galactic exploration using this Maykr technology. They travelled into space, which they termed the Empyrean Void, and wanted to spread the words and teachings of the Maykrs, or specifically the Khan Maykr, the leader of the Maykrs. The Night Sentinels would liberate people who were being oppressed. The Night Sentinels would lose some of their brave warriors, but the Argenta considered these losses worthy, as it safeguarded Argent D'Nur itself. Through alliances, the army of the Argenta grew. At some point, the Khan Maykr informed the king, Rohan, that there would come a warrior that would cause a schism or a division amongst the Argenta people, and that by using a special machine gifted to the Argenta by the Maykrs that was called the Divinity Machine, they would be able to identify this person, and the machine would cleanse this person's impurity from them. But let's discuss the Maykrs for a bit. So we've mentioned Urdak, but who created it? Well, let's first introduce ourselves to the Father. Now, the Father is spoken about in Maykr legend, and it's said that the Father, who is formless, created new worlds along with other realities. One of the Father's failed creations was Jakad, but this was deemed a failure as Jakad became Hell. There's a reason for this, but we won't discuss this just yet. The Seraphs are said to be the very first creation moulded from the void in Urdak. They are bound to the Father's will, and they helped build the Father's works. After a certain battle, which we don't know too much about, called the Battle of Isonkast, the Father stripped the Seraphs of their wings, and in their atonement, they built the Luminarium, which sits on the oldest part of Urdak. The Father, worried that the Seraphs would try to seek power for themselves, ordered them to serve anyone who manages to reach the Luminarium, no matter what. Near to the Luminarium is the Equestrian Holt, a lush expanse of supernatural nature bordering the edges of Urdak. It's a place of serenity. The groves here would be used by the Maykrs in order to meditate before meeting with the Father in the Luminarium. The Maykrs live and abide by something called the Singularity. They live under a collective consciousness, or a hive mind, essentially. Every 10,000 years, a new leader, the Khan Maykr, is birthed out of this consciousness, called unification, and because of the collective consciousness and due to each Maykr being connected to the Khan, lesser Maykrs cannot physically disobey a Khan. According to the lamentations of the Seraphs, the Khan Maykr contains within it a life sphere, and this life sphere contains the memories, intelligence, will, and essential nature of a being's consciousness. The first unification came about when the first Khan Maykr was killed during a siege. The Khan Maker's life sphere was then carried from the battle to the Luminarium, where the Khan Maykr was reconstituted. When the new Khan Maykr returned, this struck fear into the enemy and they fled. Just as they did with the people of Argent D'Nur, the Maykrs would appear to many other dimensions and would become deified by those dimensions, with Urdak itself being a realm which many believe to be heaven. So after his time in Hell, the Doom Guy was either kicked out of Hell or stumbled out, I'm not entirely sure which, and ended up in none other than Argent D'Nur. He was found bloodied and in a state of near death, muttering about impending doom and the forces of darkness, carrying strange ammunition and wearing odd armour, unsuited to the world of the Argenta. He was taken before the Dehag priests. He was muttering, speaking in what was to them an ugly foreign tongue, and saying words like blood and guts. As was Argenta custom, any outsiders would be subject to a trial in a large coliseum called the Blood Arena, located in the holy Argenta city of Sentinel Prime. He went in being referred to as the Stranger. He fought with a ferocity, brutal, vicious, and emerged victorious. The crowd was shouting Karen Tuk, which translated as rip and tear. He was no longer the Stranger, but was now called the Outlander. Still mumbling about the forces of darkness coming, the Khan Maykr was intrigued enough for her to order her Maykrs to learn the Outlander's language, English, and he spoke of unseen lands and creatures born of fire. To the Khan Maykr, this was a location where the words and teachings of the Maykrs could be spread even further. The Outlander was accepted into the Argenta army and was trained in their battle techniques. But then, a familiar enemy would come. That's right, the demons would attack, perhaps having even followed the Outlander, or Doom Guy, to Argent D'Nur. The unholy wars had begun. On something called the Eve of the Black Star, the demons came through a portal. The heroic Outlander immediately and without hesitation entered the fight, eager to continue his war, his need for vengeance above all else. Struggling against the demons and their power, a dark magic that seemed to come from their very essence, the Maykrs were perplexed, and the priests struggled to find and identify the source of the demon's power. Having captured some of these beasts, the priests eventually found that they contained within them the dark essence of the Dark Realm. They discovered that this energy could be harnessed and used to power Argenta weaponry in order to fight back on even ground, so to speak. The priests believed that if they could gain greater knowledge of this essence, then they could cut the demons off from it, giving them the advantage in battle. The Khan Maykr then gave her blessing to the king and the priests to discover more about this essence. They did eventually learn the true nature of the energy, its strengthening properties, and how it could be used to end life or even enhance it. The belief was that this would propel them to victory against the demonic hordes, and that it would benefit both the Argenta peoples and the Maykrs. The Khan Maykr would demand a tithe of this essence, and the Night Sentinels would continue to fight the demons. During the wars, the current king, Novik, felt that the Outlander had earned his place amongst the Night Sentinels. Now remember that by Argenta custom, outsiders or foreigners and people who survived the Blood Arena were not allowed into the Night Sentinels, so King Novik was breaking a huge rule. This was likely a surprise, as King Novik, after the death of his wife, was described as quite severe and distant. He has a daughter too named Thera, who is herself heir to the Sentinel throne. With King Novik allowing the Outlander a place in the Night Sentinels, some more traditional Night Sentinels disagreed. The Outlander would end up, however, earning their respect as the battles against Hell's demons raged on. Despite the invaders and the unholy wars, Argenta society would continue to grow, in large part thanks to the essence which the Argenta called a sweet elixir. They reached other dimensions and Argent D'Nur was thriving. Their research into weaponry was going well too, as well as research into other tech. But the Night Sentinels did not partake, many of them not happy with the direction the planet was heading in and how little time it was taking them to get there. Then the demons brought a Titan to Argent D'Nur, called a Dreadnought, as large as one of the Ancestrals. The Titan devastated the holy capital city of Taraznabad. The Night Sentinels considered that treason had played a part in how a Titan had managed to get through the gate without even so much as a warning. The Night Sentinels engaged the demons in battle once again, alongside the Outlander, who was now considered to be a true Sentinel fighter. The Outlander was watched by one of the Seraphim called Samo Maykr, and in secret he took the Outlander to the divinity machine, calling what he was about to receive a gift. Now this was done without the consent or knowledge of the Khan Maykr. Samo was the Khan's loyal counselor, so Samo was committing heresy. It does seem though that thoughts that the Khan Maykr was leading the Maykrs to ruin were clouding Samo's faith. Now Samo is a seraph, hence his other name, the Seraphim, and you'll also recall that due to this he is actually bound to the father and not the Khan, and that's how he was able to defy her. Anyway, the Outlander came out of the machine with enhancements, speed, agility and power, all now matching his will. Now this happened because Samo switched the polarity of the machine in secret. The Sentinels would later write about how this confused them, as the machine was created to drive out any and all impurities in them, so that the Argenta people could go on and thrive. Referring to the machine as the Holy Coffin, it said that the Outlander emerged and immediately entered the fight again. The Outlander took something called the Crucible in his hand, with wraith magic coming from it, which is written will only happen when held by a true warrior king. And he drove the Crucible into the heart of the Titan, neutralizing it. The Outlander would no longer be called the Outlander, but he would now be called the Slayer, and was deemed to be the Sentinel's chosen hero. He would also be seen as the Maker's god machine, according to the Liga Argenta. He was a holy relic reborn, sent to bring the Maker's word to the wicked. After Samo had placed the Slayer into the divinity machine, blessing him with his new abilities, it said that he was banished at some point, or exiled, as punishment for his treason and heresy, and the Khan Maykr also didn't like the rise of the Slayer at all. The Slayer would be viewed as a legend, and was celebrated in the city, with the Doomslayer's symbol being in the city, along with stained glass windows bearing his image. Over time, the Slayer would repeatedly lead the Night Sentinels into hell in order to take the fight directly to the demons. It turns out, though, that someone was planning and plotting. Whilst the Slayer was fighting alongside the Night Sentinels in hell, it was the Khan Maykr who was scheming. But let's dive into more story about the father first. According to Maykr legend, a long time ago the father created someone named Davoth, who ruled over one of his creations. You'll remember that this creation was called Jakad. Davoth was considered a prime evil, one of the very first gods. It's said that Davoth wanted Jakad to become immortal. His people were dying and he could not, as he was a god. Davoth wanted his people to have the immortality that realms like Urdak had. And Davoth's bitterness over his people's mortality would be one of the first things that would turn Jakad into hell. The father sealed Jakad off. Seeing this as betrayal along with his people dying with no way to stop it, he was planning to go to war against the father, with Davoth now referring to himself as the Dark Lord, and this is when Jakad started to be referred to as Hell. The father, realizing that creation would be torn apart, the father ripped Davoth's, or the Dark Lord's, life sphere from his chest and had the life sphere placed on top of a mountain high up above the blood swamps of hell called Ingmor's Sanctum in the Tomb of Souls, rather than having it destroyed. Samo was with the father at this moment and pleaded that he destroy Davoth's life sphere, but the father refused. The father would use a special gate called the Gate of Devum and would travel through this gate to hell in order to keep watch over the dark city of Amora. The father served as the guiding light for the Maykrs for a long time. That wasn't until he vanished from Urdak after he trusted his most faithful servant, Samo Maykr, to remove his essence or his life sphere from Urdak and had him hide it away in the Luminarium. Such was the father's fear that Davoth would try and steal his power. At some other point though, Samo Maykr shattered something called the Kezadine Veil and stole the father's life sphere, taking it up to Ingmor's Sanctum, where it sat next to Davoth's life sphere. This was an act that saw Samo being hunted in the realm of Urdak for this act of heresy, which probably explains why he ended up in Argent D'Nur. But back to the Khan. Okay, so the Khan Maykr had ordered the Night Sentinels to be sent into hell to take the land, and she had the order of the Daag secretly construct factories there, where they would merge the Wraith's energy, Sentinel energy, with Hell essence, and this would create an extremely potent power source that would be called Argent Energy. This wasn't the only site that was harvesting, as there was also one right in Hell's core too. Now, the Khan Maykr's interest in Argent Energy was that it could be used to prevent something called the Transfiguration. Because of the father now having gone missing, if you like, the Maker's process of rebirthing a new Maykr was unable to happen, having worked without error until now. The current Khan Maykr is to be the Khan now, indefinitely. As already mentioned, the Maykr rebirth process, where a new Khan Maykr is birthed, is called the unification, whereby the Maykrs merge with the singularity of the father. Transfiguration is the opposite, and is something that the Maykrs feared because it meant being turned into an abomination at the end of the 10,000 year cycle, basically. The Khan Maykr was then getting Argent Energy, but she needed more of it. But Davoth is playing a big role here. Despite Davoth's life sphere being somewhere else, he was still able to influence the demons of hell, so that explains whose orders they had been following all this time. He was the one to convince Samo Maykr that the Khan was going to destroy the Maykrs, and this is what led him to place the Slayer inside the machine, and the Dark Lord also managed to plant the idea in the Khan's head regarding the one that would cause a schism within the ranks of the Sentinels. The very clever schemer is Davoth. But back to the creation of Argent Energy again. Normally, the transformation of a person into a demon takes eons without the power of Argent Energy, as the victim would have to wander the area called the Shadowlands for a very long time before turning into a demon. The soul would drain from the body and turns into matter, becoming pools of aura, and this is what the demons would use to strengthen themselves. This aura, along with Wraith energy, is what the essence was formed from. The Khan Maykr would force Sentinel slaves to build soul spires, which would link to Argent D'Nur through continuum gates, and would speed up the process of harvesting Argent Energy from victims. The reason I mentioned Davoth just now is that the Khan Maykr had made a deal with Davoth. The demons would be given fresh worlds to consume, ones already under Maykr influence, and she and the Maykrs would be given access to the flow of Argent Energy. As long as the Argent Energy continued to flow to Urdak, the Maykrs would retain their precious immortality. After the process had been completed and the Argent Energy had been harvested, the victim is ejected into the wasteland where they will, like before, eventually turn into a demon. The essence would then be sent directly to Urdak on request of the Khan Maker, although it's written that Davoth and Hell didn't care what it was to be used for. For a very long time, Argent D'Nur and the Night Sentinels, along with the Doomslayer, were completely unaware of what the Khan Maker was up to. They would simply continue fighting. But in terms of the Slayer, the Maykrs had their eyes on him and his unique abilities, and the Khan Maker, who remember was displeased at the rise of the Slayer, had him reined in a bit. Sometime later, still during the Unholy Wars, the mining village of Kalim is under assault by the demonic forces. As the village burns, overwhelmed by the demons, a Hell Priest and an entity known only to Hell as the Witch discuss the attack on the city, and the Hell Priest calls it a fool's errand. They are there in search of something called the Heart of Argent, a precious but very mysterious artifact said to contain the soul of the last Wraith. The Hell Priest says that their time is running out and that soon the humans of Argenta will summon the Doomslayer. In the city, King Novik, who after 40 years is now the longest serving monarch in Sentinel history, receives word from one of the Night Sentinels that they found the demon's entry point, but they say that the portals were open from inside the village, and Novik surmises that their followers are letting them in. Cultists. He contacts his daughter, Commander Thera, who is stationed on Sentinel Command. She says that Commander Valen, who is Novik's right hand, and his armoured unit is 1 hour away. She contacts one of the Maykrs, Bishop Creed, and she says that they need him. Aboard the Maykr ship, the Bishop at first declines, saying that the temple must remain guarded, to which Thera responds that because Kalim is a mining settlement, this means that the Maykrs' Sentinel energy reserves will be destroyed if the village falls. So, naturally, the Bishop agrees to unleash the Slayer. The Slayer's instructions are simple: total purification of the village of Kalim. The Doomslayer, having previously been placed inside the divinity machine by Samo Maykr, and having become even more powerful, the Maykrs saw in the Slayer a valuable weapon, a gift, and he was now tethered to their will. The Maykrs' tether is achieved by way of a device placed into the Slayer's suit. The tether purifies his mind and leaves only his hatred for the demons. Being fired into the village like a rocket, the Slayer arrives and gets to work, smashing, punching, shooting and killing his way through the settlement. He comes to the beach and takes control of a mounted weapon, firing and obliterating the horde, including a Titan that is coming up the beach. He doesn't stop firing until they are all dead. The Sentinels then realise that the Slayer is under the control of the Maykrs. The Night Sentinels had absolutely no idea how under their control he was, but King Novik did. He had an agreement with the Maykrs, as he deemed the Slayer far too dangerous and that he should be kept under control. In Hell, the entity presiding over Hell is Prince Azrak, presumably filling in for Davoth himself. He is speaking with the Witch and the Hell Priest, who chastises the Prince for letting himself be influenced by the Witch, who, it needs to be said, isn't one of them, as she's from a different realm entirely. Azrak says that their enemy, the Argenta and the Maykrs, are divided, and that the time is now for them to take the heart of Argent from the Argenta, and that with it, they can conquer the beast, meaning the Slayer, and crush his allies. The Hell Priest relents, but nonetheless informs the Prince that his time to achieve what he wants is short. The Witch says that the demons fear the Slayer, so Prince Azrak's dominion over Hell is not absolute. He says to avoid the Slayer and that they should focus their attention on breaking the humans first. He sees an image of Thera lying down and speaking with a Dayak priest. Meanwhile, something is happening on the planet of Hebeth. Hebeth is a distant planet far from Argent D'Nur, and it's home to a trans-dimensional barrier chosen to be the site of this barrier just after the war started, and the barrier was designed to prevent demons from opening up portals into Argent D'Nur and the entire dimension. Another battle is taking place here, and the Maykr ship hovers above it. Creed Maykr is told that the demons are targeting the Sentinel's energy relay, which is important as it powers the barrier. The Maykr Angel tells the Bishop that the Sentinel civilians falling under the influence of demons are opening portals for them. If the barrier was to break completely, that would be very bad. Whilst the Slayer stands tethered under Maykr control, something happens to him. He's seeing a vision, a rock, and on that rock, the Slayer's mark. It does something within him and he's momentarily free of the tether, but the panicked Maykrs up the power, bringing him back under control, with them surprised that he can survive the power surges at all. But his resistance to the tether is increasing. He is then launched onto her Beth. King Novik is also there, and he, along with other Night Sentinels, approach the Slayer. Titans are busy destroying the place and are fighting huge mechs built to fight these Titans, and these mechs are called Atlans. Fighting his way through the base, the Slayer locates the source of the demonic corruption on her Beth. The demonic leader steps out of a portal and the Slayer fights it and kills the demon and its beast. The Slayer then boards an Atlan, using it to reach the relay and getting into dust-ups with any Titans in the way. King Novik gives the Slayer a huge cannon to use with his Atlan, and he gladly uses it to punch a load of holes in the Titans. With the relay overloading and in danger of being blown up, the Slayer takes the core away from the city in an attempt to save it from destruction. Thera tells him of a strip mine not too far from there, so he goes there, shoves the core into the mouth of a Titan and kicks it down into the mine. The core explodes, but her Beth is saved, and the Slayer boards a ship being piloted by Thera, but having to destroy the core had come at a cost.
The transdimensional barrier is offline. Demonic activity is surging. The Creed has requested an immediate report.
Return to the Sentinel barracks.
One of the Order of the Daag, called Daag Lorik, is talking with Prince Azrak. This Daag is the one that was standing next to Thera earlier on. He says that he did what Azrak had asked and pleads with the prince to let her soul be at peace. Daag Lorik is talking about his dead wife, who was a commoner that he'd married in secret. It's clear that Daag Lorik had been manipulated by Prince Azrak into doing something for him. Azrak asks about the Heart of Argent, to which Daag Lorik tells him it's sealed in a chamber, but that he cannot open it. No one can. Back at the Sentinel barracks in the city of Kantoth, a city built on top of the remains of the Ancestrals, King Novik and Commander Thera are informed by a Sentinel soldier that they'd received a distress signal. Daag Lorik then speaks with them from a remote location and says that he sealed it, being the Heart of Argent, from Azrak. He calls it an artifact of immense power and asks that they forgive him, and he ends their short meeting abruptly. A Sentinel soldier then shouts that they are inside. Needing to clear the barracks of demonic activity, the Slayer moves through and purifies the area of demons. He also defeats a tough demon called the Vagari Champion. Not long afterwards, the Slayer reaches the Dragon's Den, or the Drakhelm, a place where dragons are raised and trained for battle. It's said that only the most decorated of knights can earn the honour of bonding with a dragon and joining the Order of Aram, a mounted unit that rides dragons into battle. A dragon swoops in and initially seems hostile towards the Slayer, but that's not the case. You see, previously, the Slayer saved this dragon, named Sarat's life, and the injured dragon was transformed with advanced engineering into a war machine, an apex predator, and Sarat accepted the Slayer as his alpha, forming a volatile bond. The Slayer boards Sarat and takes to the skies, moving through a cavern, taking down enemy ships. Exiting the cavern, the Slayer flies Sarat towards the floating city, the holy city of Aratum, a city that we mentioned earlier on in the video. There the demons have put up a barrier, which is unfortunate, as the coordinates to the Heart of Argent are inside the city. The barrier is being powered by 4 hell carriers, so upon destroying their defences and boarding the carriers, the Slayer destroys them all from the inside, allowing Sarat to demolish more demons, including Titans, and with the barrier now destroyed, the Slayer clears an area called the Heart Chamber in order to give King Novik time to get to the chamber and retrieve the coordinates for the artifact. After it's cleared out, the Slayer goes to walk inside and sees Prince Azrak there with the witch, who activates a force field to keep the Slayer out. Prince Azrak walks inside the chamber and sees the artifact, but King Novik shows up to stop him.
How brave. Ignite the charges.
With the Holy City destroyed, the Sentinels regroup at the Sentinel stronghold in Turoth, where the people are evacuating. Thera shows up and is surprised that King Novik is holding onto the heart of Argent. Novik says that a new vault is being built, and that Thera says to let the Slayer guard it. Novik replies that he's found out just how important the artifact is, given that it's part of their heritage. Reaching Commander Valen, he says that he's seeing no signs of activity and surmises that maybe Prince Azrak didn't survive the fall of Aratum. Back on the Maykrs ship, the Maykrs comment on the rising demonic threat level and ask Creed Maykr if they should send the Slayer in, as the Sentinels will be overrun without him, but the Bishop is again quite reluctant. The Slayer seems to be fighting against the Tether again and hears the screams of people being killed by the demons, along with seeing the demonic threat on a map of the city. He once again breaks free of the Tether and looks furiously at the Maykrs doing absolutely nothing about the invasion.
The Slayer no longer wishes to be detained here.
Shield power down to 35%.
Should we terminate his life functions?
And destroy the Godmaker's prized possession.
34.
So long as he has that tether on him,
33.
we can still have a hand in his fate.
32.
There's an urgent call from the Creed Maker.
Lord Novik, a large horde is headed toward your position. We are launching the Slayer now. Please send forces immediately to ensure our safety.
Thank you, Bishop Creed.
Engaging deflector shield.
It's a massive force. 3 legions worth.
Heading out onto the battlefield, the Slayer clears it, destroys all of the gore portals which are allowing the demons to come through, and heads back to the wall. Stepping up to the mounted turret, the Slayer uses it to destroy the invading demons and the heavily armoured Titan. After it's dead with the demons inside the castle, but with most of the people there evacuated, the Slayer fights them and kills them and arrives at the hangar. His next job is to rescue King Novik, as he's being roughed up by Azrak.
No more tricks, old king.
Above the abyssal forest, inside Sentinel Command, Thera is walking and talking with some Sentinels who say that the Maykrs gave the Sentinels a clear directive if the Slayer's tether was removed. Wanting to know how to proceed, Thera tells them to do nothing. With the Doom Slayer there, he's trying to remove the tether, but Thera tells the Slayer that it can't be removed, as upon scanning it they found that it was wired to a detonator. She speaks out about Azrak and what he's after. She tells the Slayer that anyone who wields the Heart of Argent will have the power of a god, on account of it being the soul of the last Wraith. However, she does say that the heart is incomplete. It needs the other half, which is a power source, and of course, they don't know where that power source is. Valen and his men have been searching for it, but have had no luck as of yet. Naturally, if Azrak were to get a hold of the whole thing, it would be bad for everyone. Leaving, the Slayer gives Thera a nod of acknowledgement and goes off in search of the power source, with Thera telling her Sentinels to unlock something called the Ancestral Forge. But on the Maykrs ship,
contact the Ministry. You are stranded in this realm. There is no one left to trust. That is why you allow me to speak. Help us.
the Slayer arrives in the Abyssal Forest itself. The Abyssal Forest is a place where Sentinels would commune with their deities. Ever since the demonic invasion of Argent D'Nur, the tendrils of hell crept up into the forest and corrupted some of the Sentinels, and they enacted a summoning ritual, and the forest itself became a nightmare. Opening the forest gate, the Slayer finds a way through the barracks by using a bolt turret to blast his way through a wall. And not long after, just outside the entrance to the mine, the Slayer must do battle against the Agadon Hunter, a fierce beast of hell that, like the Slayer, also utilizes a shield. The Agadon Hunters themselves are outlanders torn from distant worlds that were enslaved and corrupted by hell. They used to be beast stalkers for their clans, but they now serve Azrak and this horde. Their prey is set for them by hell's dark priests, and their top prey is him that they fear most, the Slayer. After beating the hell out of it and delivering death, the Slayer enters the mine. The mine itself had been shut down after the attack and is now under demon control, but the Ancestral Forge still has power. So, the Ancestral Forge. The forge itself exists in a mountain range known as Titan's Forge, where it said that two Ancestrals, Tharok the Mighty and Elgato the Wise, clashed. Tharok won and struck Elgato down with such force that it created the Titan mountain range. The mine is used in order to mine the remains of the Ancestrals and extract their ancient blood, then distilling it into fuel. It's also written that high priests from a long time ago were able to use the giant sword in order to awaken dormant energies within it, and this imbued the ancestral blood with otherworldly powers. Entering, the Slayer increases his demon kill count and charges at the ancestral heart, which sits in the massive chamber. Having now provided power to the forge and fighting another Agadon Hunter, the Slayer meets Thera at the elevator to the forge.
No signs of the demons, Thera.
We won't have much time. The Ancestrals never really die. The heart endures. We harvest the energy. Nim unvet anme veseque. Svara. Nim unvet anme veseque.
They're here, falling back. We'll meet you at the exit.
Well, that was a surprise. With a shield imbued with what appears to be pure Sentinel energy, the Slayer can now use this to give him the edge in battle. The Slayer heads into a place that he knows all too well. He's journeyed back into hell again. The Creedmaker is talking to the Prince, telling him that he can help him target Thera's location, along with the Slayers by using the tether. The Witch says that no harm must come to Thera, as if you hadn't guessed already, Thera is the heart of Argent. I guess this is what Diagloric was doing to her while she was lying down earlier on. He hid the heart of Argent inside her. However, it's clear that Thera doesn't know that she is the true heart of Argent. The Witch states that the ceremony must take place in her world. As I mentioned earlier, she is from a different realm. Since the heart has been found, the Witch demands what she is owed, the return of her people's god to them. So the Slayers arrived in a place called the Forsaken Plains, and apart from being the location of Azrak's fortress called the Abyssal Keep, which not long into the war Sentinels tried to attack but failed, this is also a place which houses the seat of one Lord of Hell. As it is written, a throne won through blood and treachery. Prince Azrak is described as tactically brilliant, and it's how he was able to defeat King Novik and his forces when they tried to assault the keep. Azrak was born in Hell and was educated by the Dark Priests. His unholy alliance with the Witch has brought some uncertainty to his rule. The Doomslayer eventually, after many battles against the hordes of demons and destroying 2 Hell cannons, finds an Atlan core and uses it to power up a damaged and abandoned Atlan left over from one of the Night Sentinels' jaunts into Hell. Piloting the Atlan, the Slayer smashes his way through many Titans and makes it to the fortress. Heading inside, as is to be expected, more of Azrak's forces are waiting for the Slayer, but again, he's too much for them. Now inside the fortress, the Slayer finds that Azrak is not there at all. It's just his hologram. After defeating another Agadon hunter, Thera calls and says that Bishop Creed has called a meeting with her, and the Slayer uses a portal and heads back to Argent D'Nur to the Sentinel command station. Moving through the station, doors close on the Slayer, stating that access is denied. It seems that the command station is under attack. Sure enough, the demons, like a bad smell you can't get rid of, have shown up. The Doomslayer makes it to Surat and takes to the skies once more. Thera has ordered Bishop Creed be moved to the command deck for his safety. A few massive tentacles have emerged from a portal above the command station, and piloting Surat, the Slayer damages them enough that they withdraw. Since Bishop Creed had been pulled into another dimension, the Maykrs had discovered a way inside, and the Slayer heads to another realm, another dimension. The Slayer has arrived at the Spire of Narathal. This place is home to a colossal prison, and is the result of a covenant between the Wraiths and the Sentinels, as they needed to subdue a cosmic being, the god that the Witch spoke of. This god is described as a slumbering titan that is cocooned, awaiting the day of awakening. Naturally, because the covenant to build this place was between the Wraiths and the Sentinels, the Maykrs had no idea it existed, nor did many of the Sentinels or the Argenta, likely due to all the records and artifacts relating to the Wraiths being shut away in the holy city of Aratum. Draining the area, revealing a large structure underneath the waves, the Slayer fights his way through it and sees the cocoon holding the deity. Deactivating 3 emitters which were keeping the deity in stasis, the deity is awake, but the cocoon still needs to be smashed open as the creature cannot free itself. The Slayer learns of a weapon of unfathomable power called the BFC, and that can release the creature. Going to the weapon, the Slayer uses it to smash open the cocoon, and the deity lets out a roar. Taking the weapon with him and trying it out, the ballistic force crossbow is indeed a weapon of great power, as, using some sort of eldritch power, it obliterates any demons close to it. Climbing the spire, the Slayer sets eyes on the creature. Their god is the Old One, and just as legend said, he was entombed beneath the waves in a deep slumber. He looks at the Slayer menacingly. This cosmic entity is still chained up, so the Slayer needs to free him. Working his way around the spire, the Slayer frees the beast, and the beast flies up into a portal to the cosmic realm. The Slayer hitches a ride on the beast as it will take him to where Thera and the Bishop had been taken. After being directed through a number of underwater tunnels, the Slayer arrives in the city of Raul. The Slayer soon sees that this place is different. Lots of eldritch abominations are travelling around in the air. So this city is described as a dimension of unfathomable dread, where reality warps and sanity falters. Not a problem for the Slayer though. This place is covered in unholy runes, and it's said that the oracles of Argent had a theory that traced the wraiths to this very realm. A lot of the demons here are the same, given the alliance between Prince Azrak and the Witch, but naturally there are some new faces, other eldritch abominations. Moving through Riul, the Slayer fights a load more demons and manages to activate a portal. Moving through the now open gate, the Slayer finds himself in Karthul Marshes. This place is eerie. Gathering 2 relic fragments, the Slayer hears the Witch saying that the time of ascension is now, and that they'll no longer be shackled to what she considers to be a dying cosmos. So, the Witch. Basically, her name is Ulsamir, although her real name isn't known to Hell. The body that she currently possesses is just a temporary one, and one that allows her spirit to manifest in the physical world. She wanted her god released, and now it has been, the Old One. The Witch's part of the alliance with Hell was that her god would be able to travel between realms while she would provide the ancient secrets of Argent D'Nur. The Heart of Argent, to be specific. It's likely that because of this dying cosmos, her race are potentially looking at worlds they can invade too. Anyway, placing the 2 relic fragments together, the Slayer uses the key and opens up another portal, this time to an area known as the Temple of Lomarith. So the Temple of Lomarith is another cosmic wonder. It's a graveyard of vessels. It's a haunting testament to those who dared or unknowingly crossed into the cosmic realm. Following the gates, swimming through areas and fighting more demons and denizens of this realm, the Slayer eventually arrives at the temple where Thera is being held, but a surprise is in store. Now inside the belly of the beast, the Slayer must try and find a way out. Moving through the inside of the beast's gargantuan body, he's obviously been pretty darn hungry. As there are lots of demons in here, the Slayer identifies an organ he can target in order to bring the beast down. Using the ballistic force crossbow, the Slayer destroys the organ, which happens to be the beast's heart. This brings the beast down, and the Slayer exits the belly of the beast. The Old One is dead. Fighting his way back to the temple again, the Slayer climbs the long steps up to it, enters, and finds Thera inside.
Sentinels know so little about themselves. She has the spirit of an ancient sentinel god within her, a wraith who are descendants of this realm. Here, her energy becomes fully realized. And it can be harnessed.
Alone. And the Slayer. Nothing. Get him on. Bishop Creed. Where is Thera?
The Slayer came, and there was a struggle. We should leave. Now.
Everyone out, now.
The Slayer comes to, having been placed inside a prison of sorts, suspended in the air, guarded by not one, not two, but three old ones. Trying to use his shield to get out is an endeavor that is ultimately fruitless. Looking down at the tether on his suit, knowing that it's an explosive, he yanks it out with some effort. The platform explodes into pieces and knocks the three guardians over, and the Slayer falls into a sea of green liquid. The Slayer is dead. He sees his mark, glowing red, a visual representation and a symbol of his rage, and he hears the voice of King Novik telling him to rip and tear until it is done. The Slayer is in the Harbour of Souls. According to legend, this is the first layer of hell. The souls are led to a barge that takes them towards their eternal torment. The barge is in the distance and the Slayer needs to steal it. Fighting his way through the halls of despair, the undead Slayer, still filled with an all-consuming rage towards the demons, finally makes it to the barge and commandeers it. Having smashed through the gates of hell leading out of the Harbour of Souls, the Slayer finds himself in a forest. He needs to travel through this forest in order to reach the mortal plane, and he makes it to his Slayer's mark, which sits just above a deep pool of blood. Meanwhile, in Darkvale Forest on the outskirts of Eldarax, the Sentinels have turned to cultists in order to summon the Slayer. They invoke the dark powers in order to call upon the damned. An open sarcophagus lies there, and Commander Valen along with his son Marok are there. The Slayer is then reformed using dark magic and is alive once again. Brought back, resurrected. He's a man that is simply too angry to die. Valen walks into the circle created by the dark magic and hands the Slayer his helmet. Marok looks on but looks displeased. Truth is that Marok isn't convinced by the Slayer, and thinks that something that powerful, with the Slayer being a weapon, essentially, should be kept on a tight leash controlled by the Sentinels. Moving forward, the Slayer hears over the radio that Bishop Creed just surrendered, and that he is no longer responding. Getting a lift with Serat, the Slayer flies up to Bishop Creed's ship. Boarding, the Maykrs are immediately hostile towards the Slayer, so he takes them all out. Confronting the Bishop, he is begging Prince Azrak to help and save him, but the Slayer enters and fights him. Eventually, the Maykr falls.
Wait. Thera. Azrak is keeping her alive on his ship. If she dies, his power would die with her. I can take you to her.
Afterwards, with the Bishop dead, Thera is aboard Prince Azrak's ship, and he's using his new power to resurrect fallen titans. The Sentinels are fighting the demonic forces but are losing the battle. The Slayer looks up at an Atlan, but an engineer tells the king that it won't be fixed in time. King Novik turns to the Slayer and tells him to take his royal Atlan, and he'll take the damaged one with an arm missing. The Slayer then fights the resurrected and now strengthened titans with the royal Atlan and beats the living hell out of them. After putting the titans back in their place, the Slayer is surprised to see that Prince Azrak has used his newfound power of the Wraiths to resurrect the Old One, who now bears the mark of hell on his head. A punch-up now ensues between the Atlan and the Old One, and after a tough fight, the Slayer in the Atlan prevails, killing the Old One again. He looks up at Azrak and disembarks from the royal Atlan. Azrak descends to face the Slayer, saying that he can never rule as king, so as the Slayer is the only one they, the demons, fear. The Slayer and Azrak then finally face off. Azrak is strong given the help he's getting from the Wraith energy, and nothing the Slayer does seems to be hurting the prince. Finally, after a long fight, the Slayer manages to draw blood, but that's about it, and Azrak then transformed into something. He's now stronger, faster, and the Slayer is able to harm him, but only slightly. The Doomslayer, furious that Azrak kills Sarat, unleashes on the prince, beating him to within an inch of his life. Ripping the heart of Argent out of Azrak's chest, he returns to his normal form. His ship blows up and Azrak disappears, but his life signal is still transmitting from the Hell Dimension. Thera then descends, the spirit of the Wraith inside her. The Slayer then walks off, handing the artifact to King Novik. He walks past Sarat and shares a silent moment of thanks and respect before leaving. Novik approaches Thera and the heart of Argent returns to her. The Slayer then joins up with the Sentinels as they assault Hell once more. It's time to finish this.
Azra to the Slayer.
Draw the Horde to us.
The Slayer fights through hell against all the demons that Azrak can throw at him. He defeats them all. He reaches Azrak's ship and it tries to leave, but the Slayer makes it aboard. When on board, naturally, the Slayer has to fight through more demons, but he reaches Azrak, where he must now fight both him and the Witch. Defeating her and then him, the Witch once again tries to stop the Slayer, but this is in vain, as the Slayer kills her. Whilst the Sentinels are fighting the demons, the ship crashes. In the aftermath of all this, Novik speaks with Valen, who tells the king that no one has seen the Slayer since the battle, to which Novik replies that they are better off with him on his own. He turns to Marok and tells him that he's heard great things. Valen explains that the Maykrs have disavowed all actions carried out by Bishop Creed. They say he was acting alone, vowing to bring justice to anyone that collaborated with him. Thera then arrives and addresses the Sentinels. She says that it's time to now look forward, and they will always be a people of faith. She says that they must consider who they put their faith in now, given that the Maykrs seem to be a pretty shady bunch. She says that there is no better place to turn than to each other. She finishes by paying respect to the Slayer, that the people of Argent D'Nur can rest easier now, knowing that he is out there. Yes, the Doomslayer is back in hell. He's taken command of the Maykrs ship, and is using it to launch himself back into hell in order to destroy more demons. He looks down into hell, ready to kill. With the Doomslayer in hell, the Sentinel army, who are being led by Commander Valen, are there too, fighting the demonic armies. Asking for an update on Marok, his son, one of the Sentinels tells Valen that Marok is not reported in. After he headed into hell to fight the demons, and after another fight, the Slayer has his sights set on the High Council, Hell's ruling order. A path to their chamber has been discovered deep within the Dark Realm. However, the chamber is sealed, so the Slayer will need a key, which is held by what's known as the Oracle. The Slayer, still hurting and bleeding from when Azrak drove his spear into his side, puts his helmet on, as he's not done yet. He needs to smash apart Hell's throne. He trudges forward, moving towards the High Council, finding more demons in his way. One of the High Council, a Hell Priest, appears to him, welcoming the Great Slayer, and tells him that victory here earns him the right to stand before the High Council, as is written in what the Hell Priest calls the Book of Ashes. A small disc floats down and the Hell Priest says the Oracle will be his guide. During his battle, the Slayer learns that Valen and his team are outside the crypt, and they'll hold their position and wait for him to retrieve the artifact. After murdering these demons, the Slayer grabs the artifact and he is beamed back up onto the ship he'd taken from the Maykrs. Still bleeding from his wound, Thera tells the Slayer that she is no longer able to send support for his missions. There's been an uprising on Argent D'Nur. A civil war is in danger of kicking off, and all military actions now need the personal authorization of the Khan Maker herself. She says that the Sentinels and the people of Argent D'Nur are brave and fight because the Slayer gives them hope. The artifact being placed onto a scanner shows a location, and the Slayer then hears the Khan Maker's voice telling the Slayer what Thera just did, that he alone gives them hope, that she is watching from a forgotten throne, whilst all glory goes to the untethered Slayer. Seems like she's a little bit jealous of all the adoration the Slayer is getting from the Argenta. She accuses the Slayer of leading the Maker's flock astray by his acts of defiance and the weakness of Bishop Creed. She appears before him, saying that the faith of the Argenta is dissolving, and that they follow the Slayer now, asking him if he intends to rule what he has unmade, or leave them to starve in the absence of order. She says the Sentinels need a symbol so they can stand with the Maykrs again, a symbol of noble Sentinel blood. In walks that symbol, Marok. I guess this explains why he didn't check in with the Sentinels. The Khan says that Marok here has pledged his loyalty to them, and together they will strike down the Order of the Six, the High Council, thereby reminding Argent D'Nur where their strength truly lies, and that is with the Maykrs. Marok stands in front of the portal and tries to stare down the Slayer, but gets intimidated very quickly. Even the Sentinel's most proficient warrior isn't enough to get in the way of the Slayer and what he needs to do. Marok steps aside and the Slayer heads through the portal, whilst Marok's eye burns with Maker magic. Now in the proving grounds, the council chambers are just ahead, and he blasts through the scores of demons that are trying to stop him, fighting one demon in particular that he has not seen before. He has to fight another of the Agadon brutes, this one a champion. Heading through the large door, he is in front of the High Council. Their statues line the hallway leading to the chamber, and the Hell Priest is in there waiting for him. On their platforms, the 6 archdemons watch, listening to how the Slayer is the Sentinel's champion, and has come to kill all of them. The ancient Colosseum is where the legions of Hell would once gather to witness what's called the Sacred Violence, that was decreed by Malgareth the Undying. Champions would rise and fall, with their souls then being bound to the hunger of the arena. The High Councils sit right where Malgareth's throne once stood. There are ancient wards here, and these allow the High Council to stare right into the souls of all who enter here, crafting pain and torment that wreaks havoc within that person. Only those devoid of sin and doubt may truly enter the chamber, but who are the members of the Order of the Six? The first of the 6 is Theruthiel, the Old Father, the Judge of Dawn. It said that through his shattered voice, new eras are proclaimed and dynasties ordained. His temple sits in the Hall of Torment, where the bent knees of fallen kings are nailed down in the dirt before him. The second of the 6 is Karnoth, the Armourer, the Judge of Mourning. It said that Karnoth is the one that demands war and denies peace. He carries a hammer, and it's through the hammer that the armies of Hell are weaponed against all Hell's enemies. His temple sits in the Sundered Mountain, where the warmongers drive the Slaver's whip. The third of the 6 is Garzeth, the Treacherous, the Judge of Noon. It's said that he demands a tithe, and through this cunning and plundering, his coffers are filled. He's easy to be bought, with many bringing stolen treasures before him in exchange for favour, and his temple sits upon the glittering spire. The fourth of the 6 is Iscathra, the Judge of Twilight. It's said that she demands flesh, that through her divine hands, pain and ecstasy are shared in abundance. Her favour is bought with the seduction of all things pure, and through the corruption of unblemished beauty. Her temple lies within the curtained brothel. The fifth of the 6 is Tal Rasha, the last queen of Jakad, the Judge of Evening. It's said that she demands sorrow and denies mercy, and through her tears joy is devoured and sin is nurtured, with her favour being bought by vengeance and malediction bought upon innocence. Tal Rasha's temple sits upon the sunken priory. And the 6th of the 6 is Ozolith, the Old Mother, the Judge of Midnight. It's said that she demands death and denies life. Her hollow gaze engulfs things with darkness, but she cannot be bought as she is beyond all desire and appeal. It's warned that one should not seek out her temple, as in time it will find you. The High Council stare into the Slayer's soul and they see his pain, giving him a glimpse of that pain, a painful flashback that the Slayer would rather not relive. They'd identified his weakness, something they can exploit. They tell him the sins of his past give him no power there, and that only a cleansed soul may enter the chamber of the High Council. The door shut behind him and the Slayer is clearly in a bind here. He He's feeling overwhelmed due to what they exposed inside him. They tell him that he belongs there, and he'll stay there. The Hell Priest tells the Slayer that beneath this chamber is his tomb, and that he will be the Slayer's guide. He's not having that, so the Slayer blasts the Hell Priest, and he just laughs and says that he's just a servant to the High Council. The Slayer finishes the Hell Priest off with his shield saw, but hears the laughter of the archdemons. Sigils light upon their thrones, if you will, and power is beamed to the dead Hell Priest, who then transforms into a beast called the Henchman, the vessel of the Council. Essentially, this absolute unit is the will of all 6 archdemons made flesh. Trying to battle this thing is a fruitless task, as the Slayer gets an almighty humbling. Since his soul is not cleansed, as they put it, he's powerless, and his attacks do basically nothing. The Slayer is then stomped by the Henchman, ruining his armor, his helmet, and his shield saw. The ground then opens up, swallowing the Slayer along with the artifact, and he falls way down into Hell's prison, Purgatory. Lying there cold and in the dark, unconscious, the Slayer is saved by a creature who drags him off somewhere. A little while later, the Slayer comes to, finding himself having been patched up. He's in a lair of some sort and he retrieves the artifact. Exploring the area, he finds a journal written by the creature that lives here, who seems to be known as the Architect, and that he was told to be unseen, to bury the hand and to dull the edge. He mentions Davoth, and it seems that this Architect may have been the one that sculpted spires and thrones in Jakad before it became a ruined hellscape, and the Architect now calls this place a formless hunger. He once stood before the 6 grotesque monarchs, as he calls them, and they ordered him to build a prison of thought and memory, a vault for those who would not break, beings whose flesh resists the pull of the dark realm. They wanted him to build a place where the spirit will weep until the body is forced to follow. But the Architect was cunning. He knew that they would betray him after it was built, and that they would bury him inside this prison, so he purposely designed it with a flaw. There's a gate at the heart of this construct, a crucible of passage right through to the deepest wound inside the subject. Its design is to break said subject, but the Architect altered the intent and forged the oracle, with it being the vessel that delivers souls to their judgment. But he designed 2 oracles. They, the 6, hold one, and he holds the other. He planned to pass through the gate and escape unseen. Every so often, each of the kings would come down, each of them believing that they were the singular. They'd demand changes and corrections to the Architect's design. They didn't even possess the language of his craft, but he still built. Each prison would be different, as each mind would birth its very own suffering, as memory is the terrain and regret would become the trial. He then completed the gate and the oracle, and the kings came down to inspect his work. But what the Architect didn't bank on was them finding the second gate that he'd built. So they sealed the gate behind him, destroyed his copy of the oracle, the key, and took his hand that forged the key. He was trapped within his own vault. His structure was not working on him, but he found it was changing around him, responding to thought. It was listening and learning, and it hungered for suffering. In his final journal, the Architect wrote of how the Destroyer, the Slayer, had entered the vault. One who resisted the walls of his work and refused the wound. He knew exactly who the Slayer was, as even in the domain of the High Council, his name, the Slayer, bears weight. But the Architect wrote that he's not made for war, so he needs to be careful. The Slayer finds his shield saw on a table, and he sees that it's been absolutely destroyed and is unusable. The Slayer finds a chain spear there and picks it up, hearing the Architect saying the arbiters of their prison here must pay for their sins. That when the Doom Slayer leaves this place, their suffering begins. Getting to grips with the chain spear, the Slayer brings back a dead imp demon with him, as this is seemingly one of the Architect's favourite meals. The Architect then lights up torches with green flames and shows the Slayer the way. He's led to a large space, and the Architect says this place is the Slayer's pain, given shape. The prison the Order of the Six had him build for them. The Slayer is to find the keys to unlock his suffering. Inserting the oracle into a plinth there, the Architect says only a cleansed soul may leave. He needs to find 3 ascension stones, each of which exact a price. Each has a trial of absolution attached to it, which the Slayer must overcome. The Slayer must confront the sins of his past if he's to become powerful enough to stand before the High Council and kill the Order of the Six. The trials of absolution are, according to the Architect, crafted to expose the hidden pain of the ones undertaking them by twisting the subconscious. The oracle is designed to be the conduit of this torment, but when guided by the Architect, this torment can turn to absolution. Entering the first portal, the Slayer embarks upon the trial of the righteous, slaying many demons on the way to the excavation zone. This place is Hell's core, Defeating this annoying bastard, the Archvile, along the way, the Slayer eventually comes across a machine. Maykrs technology. Hell's Core is a place where, just like Necrovol, the essence is being gathered from the suffering of the damned. Defeating the beasts guarding the machine, the Khanmaker again appears to the Doomslayer. She says that by denying the Argenta the essence, Hell's power, he is condemning the Argenta people to ruin. Ignoring her, the Slayer severs the connection that is funneling raw Hell energy to Urdak, and he grabs the first Ascension Stone. The trial of the righteous completed. He sees a glimpse of what torments him. Something from his past, from when he was a Marine. Back on Earth, of him on the solo mission to clear out the insurgents who had taken the hospital back in the year 2046. This is the thing that torments him. The incident that broke him. Returning to the Oracle, the Slayer sees a newly arrived soul there in Purgatory. He's able to see into the last moments of these fresh souls. This person, who was one of the Sentinels helping King Novik track down and find the Slayer, was asked by Novik to keep looking for the Slayer quietly, as he thinks they're being watched. Marok is there too, and after staring at the Sentinel intently, he walks off with Novik. Placing the stone in the Oracle, one lock has now been opened. 2 more to go. Back in the lair of the Architect, the Slayer finds the Architect has mended his shield saw. The Architect assures the Slayer that he is not his enemy, but that he is his way out. Jumping through the second portal, the Slayer heads for the second trial. He's now inside the Chasm of Kalgoroth. Approaching a monolith, the second Ascension Stone is there, but before he can grab it, it gets encased and the Slayer is then transported to a labyrinth designed to test the mind and one's will. This is the trial of will. The Chasm of Kalgoroth isn't part of Hell, but it's a fragment that has been torn from the great cosmic expanse, which was the realm once held beneath the will of the Old One. That was until he was killed by the Slayer. After the Old One was killed, his will no longer held the form of the realm together, and this was what severed the Chasm of Kalgoroth from the rest of the realm. It's now drifting through the greater consciousness between worlds, where no dominion can be established. The cube that encased the Ascension Stone was one being held by Ulsamir, who you'll remember was the witch loyal to Azrak. She used it to trespass between realms. Moving through this warped and mind-bending labyrinth, the Slayer fights more abominations and finally makes it to the end of the labyrinth, where he discovers that he needs to destroy 2 power cores to break open the cube. Overcoming a bunch of puzzles, the Slayer finds a couple of eldritch keys he needs, and one after the other he destroys the 2 cores. Escaping this labyrinth as it closes on him, the Slayer is able to get back to the second Ascension Stone and takes it. He has another flashback of that night in 2046, forced to come to terms with that which deeply scarred him. Again, he places the second stone into the Oracle. Time now to go after the final stone. Moving through the final portal, the Slayer goes to Osseous. He's in the heart of death itself, the ruin of mortal flesh. He must conquer death here, as to conquer death is to control inner darkness, and he must come to know his pain. This is the trial of might. This dusty old place was once known as the Gorefields of Jakad. It used to be a landscape of flesh and rot, which itself was a manifestation of the death and consumption that had taken hold of the Dark Realm. Demons that resided here stripped all the flesh from those who dared to enter here, and with every feast, the land was consumed until all that was left was just dust and bones. A skeletal wasteland is all that remains. Simply walking through the city is an act of defiance against the order of death and decay that rules over Osseous. Moving on up to the Citadel, the Slayer fights his way through it and obtains 2 skull keys, and these give him access to the 3rd stone. He then witnesses the final piece of his torment. The young girl and the 20 survivors who he failed to save from the blast. Heading to place the final stone in the Oracle, he sees a fresh soul there in Purgatory.
Look into the eyes of the fallen. Their final reckoning. A fracture in your prison.
There.
With the Slayer gone, have you not found peace? The demons, they have retreated. Their war is with him.
I've heard enough.
If we leave him, there could be more than just peace. Prosperity. I have been assured. Think of your people.
Heading over to the gate, Marok removes the Oracle, deactivating the portal. The Slayers root back. A fight then takes place with Marok imbued with the power of the Maykrs. However, even with this much power, he's not strong enough to defeat the Slayer.
Unifying our worlds to live in peace. Novik died so we could live. I will honor his selfless act. He knew the Slayer was responsible for his death. And you saw it. He comes now. For you, he brings the Horde. He'll leave us in ashes.
What on earth happened to Marok? Why was he so easily led astray? Well, it seems that Marok had been feeling a burden. He wrote to his father at some point saying there was no excuse for his failure to report, but that he couldn't explain how and why that came to pass. He stated that he serves the people, his king, Novik, but that he's losing hours from his own mind, and that he's been unable to sleep, hiding his exhaustion from his Sentinel brothers. His memories inexplicably vanished without warning, and he would awaken in his chambers hours later, not knowing how he got there. His father responded, telling him that he was to command the regiment in his absence. He told Marok that what he's experienced was common, but that he should seek counsel with the Deag priests, so they could cleanse his thoughts and restore his focus. Well, he went to the Deag priests, who questioned him. He wrote that he had taken measure of the Sentinel ranks whilst the Slayer had been absent, and he had seen that the ranks had been whispering amongst themselves. The Slayer is not one of them, and Marok held this view for a long time and resents the Slayer, feeling that such a weapon should indeed be tethered to the Maykrs. Marok wrote that since he arrived on Argent D'Nur, the demon horde had only grown and there'd been no victory, only more blood. Marok wrote that he swore an oath to protect their people and thought their war needed to be fought using a different approach. He would write to his father again saying that he'd noticed something had changed, and that the demons had slowed their advance, and some were calling it a trick. He wrote that both Novik and Thera thought the demons were waiting to catch the Sentinels off guard. He realised that the Slayer being gone from them had turned the battle away from them, and he believed this was evidence that the Slayer was the target of the demonic fury. He wrote that Valen believed the Slayer was the key to defeating the demons. Marok believed the Slayer was the cause of the demons attacking them. He wrote that the Khan Maykr had reached out to him and spoke of both balance and control, and she told him the people would be sat waiting for a champion that may never return. She had offered Marok strength, power, something she told him was earned. Marok stated to his father, however, that he did not trust the Khan. The Deag priests granted Marok protection and performed rites to shield his mind, and Marok had started to hear the Khan's voice. He told his father that her voice hasn't taken root, and that he's letting her believe that he is loyal. He finished by vowing to his father that he would find a way to end the war. Commander Valen had written to Commander Thera at some point, telling her that records had confirmed King Novik's final transmission reported progress in locating the Slayer. Nothing after that. So after investigating the relay chambers himself, Valen found evidence that records had been manually deleted across multiple stations, and that Marok's access logs had been altered too. He told her that the men are ready and willing, and he mentioned something called Plan Ash. It's clear that the Sentinel soul that the Slayer peered into earlier was indeed killed by Marok. Marok has a Maykr tether on his temple, much like the one the Slayer had attached to his own armour to keep him tethered to the will of the Maykrs. Marok hasn't been fully in control of his actions, he was just being used by the Khan Maykr. The Ministry had questioned the Khan Maker's partnership with the Dark Realm, with the Khan reminding them that her condition was getting worse and worse with each cycle, that both she and their people were running out of time. The Slayer was a hindrance to the Khan Maker's plan, running through hell killing demons, all whilst the demons were withholding what they had promised to her. That was until they told her what she wanted to hear, the location of the Oracle, which we know is the key to the Chamber of the Six, the Council Chamber. The plan was for Marok to follow the Slayer through the portal to the chamber, for the Slayer to kill the Six, and for Marok to emerge alone and victorious, reborn as a loyal protector for the age that was to come. But Marok, tethered in a similar way that the Slayer was back when he was one of the Maker's weapons, where he was resisting them. However, the Ministry warned that Marok would not survive a greater burden by way of a more powerful tether. The Khan Maykr had been warned by the Ministry that should Marok expire, and given Commander Valen's influence amongst the Sentinel army, this would very likely result in a breaking down in Maykr relations with the people of Argent D'Nur. The Ministry had already shown concern that the Argenta had started to doubt, and were losing faith in the Maykrs, with King Novik being identified as the key driver of this undermining of Maykr edicts. The Khan Maykr wasn't having this warning from the Ministry though, and she said they needed to act with resolve and not hesitation if they're to preserve their order. She vowed to continue their harvest until a cure is found to the Maker's predicament. Marok breaks free from the Slayer, and the Slayer has to fight Marok once again. This time the Khan Maykr herself appears during the battle and helps Marok. She tells the Slayer that a new world is forming, that with Azrak slain, the High Council accepted her terms. Defeating Marok again, the Slayer approaches him ready to kill him, but the Maykr magic in his eyes fades. The Slayer knows the power of the tether all too well, and he lowers his weapon. The Khan Maykr calls him useless, and she overloads the tether. Marok pulls out a knife and stabs himself in the temple, straight through the tether, meaning that the Khan can control him no more. An explosion throws the Slayer back off a cliff edge, but he is saved by the Architect. Pulling him up, it's clear the Architect is terrified of the Slayer. The dead girl from the hospital mission appears, but runs off and disappears, and the Oracle with the 2 Ascension Stones is on the ground. The Slayer has the 3rd stone, and he goes to the Architect's workshop. Meanwhile, Thera writes in her personal ledger a message to her father, King Novik. She's been told that Novik is merely delayed. She has no idea yet that her father has been killed as a result of the Khan Maker's scheming. The term Plan Ash comes up again, and Valen has urged her to issue the order, an order that she says will carry them beyond the old world, forever. She states that she's going to give the Plan Ash order tomorrow, telling her father that if he stands beyond the veil, to forgive her for what she's about to do. In the workshop, the Slayer presents the Architect with the Oracle. He uses these stones of ascension, merges them together, and places the singular stone into a powerful suit of armor, which would be called the Praetor suit, which will now make the Slayer capable of interdimensional travel. The Slayer is back. A final message from the Architect reveals that the Architect is going to go through his own trials here, to pass through the gate not as its master, but as a subject. When he emerges, he shall be known as a wretch to his own kind. Approaching the gate, the Slayer's soul has been realized through pain, and his new Praetor suit is now his key. The Architect looks at the Oracle and sees that he's received his first stone, the first step in him being able to leave this place. The Slayer steps through the portal and back to Argent D'Nur. He is to expose the lies and scheming of the Khan Maykr. Looking round, Argent D'Nur has reached a pivotal moment. Things are tense here. On the way to the throne room, the Slayer passes people who are angry about what's going on. Those loyal to the Maykrs are urging people to not let fear cloud their faith in the Maykrs. Walking into the throne room, Thera is surprised to see the Slayer, and the Khan Maykr starts to get a little bit nervous. Thera sees the Slayer carrying her father's axe, and the Khan Maykr has an idea of what's about to happen. She's about to be exposed, and she tells people there to seize the Slayer. Naturally, none of the people there comply, and the Slayer walks straight over to Thera, handing the axe to her. She sees her father's final moments, killed by a controlled Marok under the direction of the Khan. Valen sees a tear roll down Thera's cheek, takes one glance at the Khan Maykr, nods, and tells all the Sentinel squads to execute Plan Ash. So what exactly is Plan Ash? Well, simply put, Plan Ash was a phrase to be used when the Argenta could no longer trust the Maykrs, and that they should be treated as a hostile force. They're considered the enemy. The Sentinels are fully aware that there will be pockets of the Argenta people who are pro-Maykr, and that these people will show resistance. There's about to be a fracture within the Knight Sentinels, those who are loyal to the Khan and her Maykrs, and those who are loyal to their own people. The plan is for mass evacuation of Argent D'Nur. Thera clears out the throne room, leaving the Khan there with the Slayer. She says that she wants to rule over Hell and command its forces. With those forces under her command, she'll be able to invade worlds as she likes, giving her all the essence she could ever want. But she doesn't want the smoke, so she beams out of there along with her 2 blood makers. Demons then appear in the throne room, and the Slayer happily takes them all out. Heading outside, there's another demonic invasion happening. Getting to the courtyard and slaughtering hundreds of demons on the way, the Slayer joins up with Thera and other Sentinels there. The Khan tells Thera their father's kingdom is broken and that her cities burn, that Hell cannot be defeated but it can be controlled, and that she will be its new master. She uses her powers of manipulation, telling the Sentinels there that this world has only known suffering. She offers them one chance of salvation. Many Sentinels there walk forward, lured in by the Khan Maker's false promise of salvation. The Argenta civil war has now begun. She disappears, taking those loyal to her with her, telling her that those not loyal to her, their primitive realm can die with them. A portal opens up and out comes the henchman. It's time for the Slayer to get some sweet, sweet revenge. Thera and her Knight Sentinels leave, and the Slayer gets ready to fight. So the Hell Priest that Doomguy killed, who turned into this abomination, is called Belias, and the High Council call him their henchman, and that he turned into this form as he'd been granted Ascension. He was rewarded for his devotion, for his duty, and for serving Prince Azrak. When Azrak was defeated by the Slayer, Belias recovered Azrak's spear from the battlefield and brought it before the High Council. With the spear covered with the blood of the Slayer, it is through this blood that they were able to see the Slayer's weakness, a fracture buried deep within the soul of the Slayer. Since Azrak's spear had been forged for the Dark Realm, it had been made to draw forth memories and hidden pain from his mortal life. Even though he'd been made pretty much superhuman by way of the divinity machine, it got exposed. Being brought before the Hell Council was their plan all along, to turn the truths they'd learned via the spear against him, and that within the council chamber the Slayer could be rendered mortal. Anyway, it's time for the henchman to die, and after a tough battle, the Slayer defeats this ugly mother. Thera addresses the Sentinels still loyal to the Argenta, and she tells them the time for politics is now over, to reject the Maykrs and their ways now and forever. She tells them to stand behind their courage, and to stand behind the Slayer, that their war begins now. The Sentinels below start chanting Karen Tuk, rip and tear. After Marok's death, rites had been performed for him, and memory of him was placed among the kings of old. Vaylin then wrote to the High General stating that the Daeags have reported a significant surge in essence activity in the Barren Lands, pointing to something the Khanmaker has been doing. Of course, this is Necrovol and the Essence Factory. Vaylin said a reconnaissance force was being assembled. The idea was to find whatever it was they thought was in Necrovol and expose it so that those still clinging to the Essence and their faith in the Maykrs could see what the Khan was really up to. The Sentinels that chose to put their trust in the Maykrs were likely scared of losing what they believed to be their place in the afterlife, in the realm of Urdak. And as we know, the other side wanted to abandon their faith in the Maykrs. So a civil war would break out on Argent D'Nur. The Sentinel insurrection would be those who now distrusted the Maykrs, and the ones who still worshipped them would be known as the Ascended Empire. The Knight Sentinels who were part of the insurrection would travel and tell people about the evil of the Essence. The Maykrs would of course continue to promise the Ascended Empire that they would experience eternal life in Urdak. The Knight Sentinels would prefer not to fight a war that would literally tear them apart and that would see them fighting their own kin. Those not loyal to the Maykrs would turn back to Wraith energy in order to power their weaponry, rejecting the Essence. The Slayer of course sided with the Knight Sentinels and fought against those loyal to the Maykrs. Going to battle, the Sentinels planned to close the factories in Necrovol and stop the flow of the Essence to Urdak. After doing this, the Wraiths would be awakened and this would give the Argenta courage. Sometime after the Slayer had defeated the henchmen, Vaylin stood in the dark, hearing voices whispering to him, and he was hearing Marok's screams, and there was a knock on the door. It was Thera holding her father's axe so that Vaylin could see for himself what Marok had done. One of the Daeag priests named Daeag Grav, who had allied himself with the demons, was the one who had been tormenting Commander Vaylin, showing him visions of Marok being tortured in hell. Anyway, Vaylin had made a deal with Daeag Grav, who had offered to resurrect Marok in exchange for access or keys to the elemental sepulchre, which contained the slumbering wraiths. Doing this, Commander Vaylin led the priests and the demons to the wraiths. Daeag Grav then set a curse on the wraiths, and Marok was returned in the form of the demons, in the form of the Icon of Sin. As for that reconnaissance team that Vaylin had assembled, they'd managed to get to Necrovol and found the torture factories that produced the Argent Energy. They discovered that the very essence they'd relied on during the war was made up from the torment of their own fallen heroes. They'd also discovered something about the divinity machine too. The machine itself contained part of the Dark Lord's essence, placed in there by the Khanmaker. The grisly truth is that the Khanmaker threw the Sentinels that crossed over to her side into the divinity machine, but they went mad and their souls got destroyed. The Slayer led the Knight Sentinels into Necrovol and gathered to head through the gate. but the Daeg priests had tricked the Knight Sentinels into believing that the way was clear. Entering the portal into Hell, the Knight Sentinels got separated as the gate had been twisted and warped, and each of them were surrounded. Those close to the gate's back found that the Daeg priests had barred them shut, dooming the Knight Sentinels to death. But the priests, having sworn themselves loyal to the Khan Maker, were not the only reason this had happened. Commander Valen had betrayed the Knight Sentinels and by extension the whole of Argent D'Nur, and Valen would come to be known as the Betrayer. Despite them knowing they'd likely be killed in this betrayal, the Knight Sentinels fought like hell. They'd killed hundreds of demons and titans. They'd fought using Atlans, but when they stopped working, the Knight Sentinels would exit them and fight on the ground. As for the Slayer, he would continue to kill demons, so the demons would send a titan after him, which he duly slayed. Easy. So they set a trap for him.
Yet as the mighty titan fell, and dread engulfed the armies of doom, the demon priests of the blood temples laid a trap to capture the scourge of hell, insatiable even by the vanquishing of the Great One. The Hellwalker sought prey in the tombs of the Blood Keep, and blinded by his fervor, the lure drew him in. The priests brought down the temple upon the Doomslayer, and in his defeat entombed him in the cursed sarcophagus. The mark of the Doomslayer was burned upon his crypt, a warning to all of hell that the terror within must never be freed. There he lies still and evermore in silent suffering.
It was the Dark Lord who had ordered the Slayer frozen, but we'll find out why a bit later. In the aftermath of the betrayal, the Wraith's souls then powered a new source of Argent energy the demons called the Well, and this in turn led the demons into a new age, and they called this new age the Ascension. Argent D'Nur was then completely overrun by the demons and fell. The Ascended Empire, the corrupted Argenta loyal to the Maykrs and the Daeg priests, then took control of their world. The Betrayer then enacted a self-imposed exile, choosing to spend whatever life he had left in Hell to atone for his sins and betraying the realm he vowed to protect, and that he vowed to defend with his life. This now carries us into the events that took place in the lead up to Doom 2016. So, Dr. Samuel Hayden. Hayden, a renowned philanthropist and skilled in many areas of scientific research, was someone that was also born into a powerful family. He, at some point, founded the Samuel Hayden Foundation, which helped young talented scientists by sponsoring them. He was eventually recruited by the United Aerospace Corporation, or the UAC, and he'd become the director of the UAC shortly after they'd found Argent Energy on Mars, which had leaked out of a fracture called an Argent fracture. This was a result of the energy from the well passing through a dimensional tear and into the fracture. Argent energy was so potent that it had rendered nuclear power obsolete. What would take nuclear energy 12 months to generate could be generated in seconds with Argent energy. A tower called the Argent Tower was built, but during this time Dr. Hayden was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer and had months to live. In response to this, in order to carry on living, Hayden transferred his consciousness to a 3-meter tall mech body, allowing him to become pretty much immortal. On a journey, or an expedition into Hell, Hayden's team had discovered something called the Helix Stone. This was an artifact that taught them how they could harness Argent energy and use it for themselves. It taught them about the Well, and they also learned about the Doomslayer. When the Argent Tower had been completed, Dr. Hayden became project director for the Argent facility, and a new technological revolution took place with Argent energy at the core. This Argent energy would then be sent to Earth, as Earth really needed a new energy resource. This let people know on Earth and in the solar system that the man who was in charge of this power was Dr. Hayden. An AI was also created called Vega, and Vega would assist in research matters along with development at the facility. The AI is powered by a mixture of unrefined Argent plasma from the Argent fracture and UAC tech. And this is where we meet someone called Olivia Pierce. Hayden tried to recruit her to the UAC, but whilst initially reluctant to join, she changed her mind once she was shown the Helix Stone. She was infatuated with it for some reason. She then became the director of a program there at the facility called the Lazarus Project. A long time after the Slayer had been frozen in stasis, the UAC were carrying out an expedition at the Kadingir Sanctum led by Hayden. They were trying to uncover specimens of demons and artifacts from hell. The Slayer's sarcophagus was heavily guarded, but the UAC killed the demons guarding it and relocated the sarcophagus to their base back on Mars. In the meantime, Olivia Pierce had been growing even more obsessed with the stone, so much so that it corrupted her mind. Hayden was aware of this, so suspicious of her, he hid the Slayer's sarcophagus somewhere secret inside the facility. His hunch was right, as Olivia had already made a deal with the Dark Lord. But the Dark Lord wasn't too pleased about the UAC discovering the Slayer's tomb, as they had a deal. See, Olivia had developed a spinal condition. She was wheelchair bound and she had an experimental procedure done which fitted her body with an exoskeleton which itself attached to her spine. This allowed her to walk again, but she would be in a great deal of pain doing so. The deal she'd made with the Dark Lord was to facilitate Hell's planned invasion of Earth, and in return she received great power herself. She would form a cult in the UAC which would worship the demons, and who were dedicated to decoding what was on the stone. Hayden had kept the in-stasis Slayer close, just in case he needed to unleash him. He would need him sooner than he had expected. After Olivia had used the Argent Tower in order to release demons into the UAC facility, Dr. Hayden woke up the Slayer. Coming to, the Slayer breaks free of his restraints and kills some corrupted UAC scientists after picking up a weapon. Touching his Praetor suit, he experiences visions of torment. Using a nearby monitor, he cannot find any information about this invasion as the satellite is offline, so that's what he needs to do. He needs to bring it back online and realign it. Before setting off, he hears from Dr. Hayden, but the Slayer isn't interested in working together, nor is he interested in what he has to say to him. Finding a combat shotgun, the Slayer comes across an old foe, a demon, and he duly splatters it. Moving into the next area, he fights off a load more demons and enters an elevator where he once again hears the voice of Hayden.
I'm willing to take full responsibility for the horrible events of the last 24 hours, but you must understand. Our interest in their world was purely for the betterment of mankind. Everything has clearly gotten out of hand now, yes. But it was worth the risk, I assure you.
The Doomslayer is not happy. Stepping out of the facility and onto Mars, the Slayer fights more demons and finds the entrance to Resource Ops. Inside, and after rerouting power and Resource Ops, the Slayer hears a message from Olivia Pierce to her followers.
I believe in honesty, especially now, in what will be your final moments in this world. All the rumors, the human sacrifices, the hell portal, the demons, it's all true. My sisters and brothers, be thankful. You will be the first. You will have a seat alongside them, just as I will, in what will become the new world that they create for us. Starting now.
Moving further into the facility, listening to UAC propaganda, the Slayer finally makes it to the satellite controls and realigns it. Hayden makes contact too, and tells the Slayer that he's blocking his access to the facility scanner and to go to the Vega terminal. Reaching said Vega terminal, Dr. Hayden gifts the Slayer with an Argent cell, which will increase his strength. He goes on to say that he's unlocked all the other Argent cells within the facility for him, and Vega says that over 61,000 UAC members have been killed as a result of this invasion and that 81% of the facility is on lockdown. Vega says the invasion originated inside the Lazarus facility and that 64% of UAC members have now become demonic, and that captured demons had been released from their holding cells by Olivia Pierce. Hayden once again talks about how exploiting Hell's resources was in the best interest of humanity, and that the demonic invasion of the facility is the cost of progress. An alert then rings out, and Vega says there's an emergency in the foundry. Its regulators have been destroyed and the core temperatures are destabilizing. Yep, you guessed it, the Slayer needs to go and stop the meltdown or they'll all die. So he heads to the airlock for the foundry. In order to stop the meltdown, the Slayer needs to purify the area of demonic activity, so basically he rips and tears until it is done, by destroying 4 gore nests in the area. After this is done, the Slayer activates the cooling turbine, preventing the meltdown as the core temperature is now stabilized. Hayden then says that a primary control hub has been activated, and he thinks that it may be Olivia, so the Slayer goes to investigate. Sure enough, Hayden was right.
Authorization. Olivia Pierce. Alpha 402.
She has locked me out, Dr. Hayden.
All power rerouted to Argent Energy Tower.
She is trying to tear open the portal between our world and theirs.
You could not have saved them anyway.
Hayden says that only Olivia can override what she's just done. He says that they need to shut down the Argent Tower manually from the surface of Mars, and this will, they hope, prevent a hole or a doorway being drilled into hell by disabling the tower's energy filters. The Slayer makes it to the first of the 3 Argent filters, and Hayden asks the Slayer to very carefully remove it, as they are only temporarily shutting down the tower. Of course, the Slayer wants the whole thing out of commission, so he destroys the filter, much to Hayden's annoyance, as of course, he wants to keep on producing Argent Energy. Destroying the remaining 2, Hayden is now really annoyed, stating that what the Slayer has destroyed is more valuable than he can possibly imagine. A perfect and unlimited energy resource. But I'm getting the feeling the Slayer does not really care. The Slayer has successfully shut down Argent Energy production. Vega chimes in, saying that Olivia Pierce is still alive and inside the Argent Tower. Not only that, but she's managed to remove one of the accumulators from the tower's base. Vega says they can track its unique energy signature. Slayer now needs to go and kill Olivia Pierce before she can use the accumulator to open up a trans-dimensional rift, as this will open up a portal into their world, allowing the demons to pour through it. On the way to the tower, the Doomslayer fights stronger demons such as Revenants, and these are demons that Olivia had experimented on and enhanced with armor sets and increased firepower. The Slayer once again spots Olivia, and she's carrying the Argent accumulator. Reaching the inner tower, the Slayer is confronted by a Mancubus, and the Slayer kills it, along with a load of other demons. He scales the tower to the top.
This is not the end! It's only the beginning!
With Olivia having opened the doorway to hell, a lot of unfavorables pour out of it, and the Slayer has to take them all down. A bright white light bursts out from the machine, and the Slayer is now lost, having been dragged into the Hell dimension. He needs to find a way back to Mars. He is actually in the Canon Sanctum, where he was buried in the sarcophagus all those years ago. Following the markers left by Samuel Hayden's expedition into Hell, the Slayer manages to find the tomb in which he was contained. Using the teleporter, the Slayer enters the portal and makes it back to Mars, where it's clear that this world has been absorbed into the Hell dimension. Hayden says the Argent Tower has been destroyed, so the portal can't be closed from this side. The Hell energy flows from a place we've already mentioned called the Well. The Slayer makes his way to a terminal and learns more about Olivia.
Olivia has an artifact in her private lab that we've been studying for years. I believe you can use it to find the answers you seek. It bears your mark.
Olivia's personal laboratory is not part of the registered facilities database. Alpha-level clearance will be required to locate it. Granted.
You can access her Lazarus facility from the north sector of the Advanced Research Complex, about 80 kilometers away.
I'll bring the tram power online to take you there, but you'll need a UAC corporate facilities clearance card to activate it. There is a security station nearby.
Retrieving the keycard from the security station, the Slayer learns that it was actually Olivia that discovered the Slayer sarcophagus, but for obvious reasons she didn't want Hayden to take the sarcophagus back to the UAC facility. But of course Hayden pulled rank and retrieved the Slayer from the Canon Sanctum. Using the tram, the Slayer heads towards the Lazarus facility. Hayden says that it's now time they meet in person, so he tells the Slayer to go to his office, which is on the 2nd floor of the facility. Fighting his way through the demon-infested facility, the Slayer meets Dr. Samuel Hayden.
Do not be alarmed by the system update. It is a prototype of our interdimensional tether, a means for me to pull you back from hell. I'm sorry for the jolt, but I didn't think you'd allow its installation voluntarily. I'm Dr. Samuel Hayden, I have supplies in my office. This way, please. The destruction of the Argent Tower is devastating, but I am committed to helping you close the portal. All of our work and understanding of their world is derived from the inscriptions on a large stone artifact we pulled from Hell in the earliest days of the program. We call it the Helix Stone. It is our most closely guarded asset. Olivia was obsessed with it. From it, we learned how to manipulate Hell's energy, bend it to our will, take advantage of their resources. It also led us to you. The Helix Stone showed us how to harness the power of the well. I believe it will show you how to shut it down. For years, Olivia has kept the Helix in her private office in the Lazarus Labs, which is only accessible through a secure elevator from the Advanced Research Complex across the chasm.
After this chat, the Slayer infiltrates the weapons division and obtains the weapon called the BFG 9000, which is a weapon that fires pure Argent energy. Descending in the elevator to the Lazarus Labs, the Slayer hears from Hayden that the Helix Stone is in Olivia Pierce's lab, deep within the facility. Reaching the Helix Stone, the Slayer once again has a disturbing vision of a hellish artifact, the Crucible, similar to the one he used to slay the Dreadnought in Argent D'Nur, but this is the Hell version of it, if you like.
The Crucible. That's what she was looking for. Vega, did you get the location?
Yes. It is located in an uncharted region of the Titan's realm, but we'll need to rupture another Argent accumulator to create the portal. The only accumulator in this sector is in specimen CD-587.
You're going to have to remove it. Once you've extracted the accumulator, it will become unstable. The ruptured casing should cause a rift strong enough to send you back to their world. We can determine your point of entry using the tether system I uploaded to your suit. Retrieving the Crucible is critical. Without it, we have no way of shutting down the well and closing the Hell portal here on Mars.
Closing the portal, the Doomslayer soon meets this CD-587, which is a cyber demon revived and rebuilt using Argent energy, and the Slayer defeats it, pulling the Argent accumulator from its chest. The Argent accumulator then transports the Slayer to the Hell dimension, where he has to fight the cyber demon once more. Killing it for the second time, the Slayer enters another portal. He is now in the Titan's realm. The Slayer pushes deeper into this realm, taking out scores of demons. He reaches a place called the Necropolis and fights 3 Hell Guards, creatures controlled by parasites who are guarding the place. After defeating the beasts, the Slayer then grabs the Crucible. He is then approached by 5 Night Sentinel spirits just as Dr. Hayden activates the tether, pulling him back from the Hell dimension.
You have the Crucible, and with it the means to contain the power of the well. We have a plan to send you there. Vega will walk you through the process.
With the Crucible in hand, which can put an end to all this by severing the connection between the Hell dimension and the realm it's trying to invade, the Slayer goes to access Vega's main terminal. Vega makes contact and says that it takes a lot of energy to power it, but they want to use some of that power to send the Slayer to the well. Vega will not survive the procedure, but is happy to walk the Slayer through the process. Turning off 2 security switches, the Slayer is now able to access Vega's main terminal. Destroying the coolant systems, the AI begins to melt down. Going to Vega's core, the Slayer shuts Vega down, but places the AI onto a backup drive. Hayden thanks Vega and the Slayer then gets transported to Hell once again. He arrives on Argent D'Nur, and this place is now the heart of Hell itself. So remember, the elemental wraiths were captured and corrupted by Hell after Valen's act of betrayal. Well, here, as mentioned earlier, they've been strung up on sacrificial altars which siphon their elemental energy into powering the well. Fighting his way to the well, the Slayer lays the 3 corrupted wraith souls that are powering the well to rest by using the Crucible. The Slayer then confronts Olivia, who realizes that she's been used.
They promised me so much.
The Slayer then fights Spider mastermind Olivia, who in her madness had merged her soul with an ancient demon, and kills her. Once again, Hayden activates the tether and pulls the Slayer back to Mars, where he is then captured.
You've won. It's over. You stopped the invasion and closed the portal. But it's come at a price. Argent, Vega, this entire operation. You see, I've watched you work, come to understand your motivation. You think the only way is to kill them all, leave nothing behind. And you may be right. But we can't just shut it all down. Without Argent Energy, it will be worse. I don't expect you to agree. But with this, we can continue our work. I am not the villain in this story. I do what I do because there is no choice.
Rerouting tether coordinates complete.
Our time is up. I can't kill you, but I won't have you standing in our way. Until we see each other again.
And that brings to a close Doom 2016. So Samuel Hayden sent the Slayer to somewhere known as the Void, somewhere that he's been before. He found a way out and either on Argent D'Nur or in space, discovered a ship that had been built during the reign of the Sentinel King Danak. It was a hybrid of both Argenta design and Maykrs technology, and was used as a command station for the Night Sentinel's galactic exploration. He would name this ship the Fortress of Doom. He would also, using the backup of the Vega AI from the facility on Mars, install Vega as the AI on the Fortress of Doom. Vega created an interdimensional multiversal gateway on the Fortress of Doom. Oh, also, Earth has now been invaded. This was led by the Hell Priests, the former but now corrupted Deag priests of Argent D'Nur. They would be carried in their temples on hell barges which were perched on the backs of the thrall, lumbering titans with which the priests would have a psionic connection. Earth was also invaded on the instruction of the Khan Maker due to the destruction of the Well, as the souls of mankind could be converted into Argent Energy because the girl needs her soul juice. 60% of the Earth's population are dead, and the UAC has been corrupted by people or cultists who are loyal to Hell.
Our trans-dimensional friends shall not walk on tainted ground. Earth must be cleansed.
Fortified locations were built but fell quickly, and large areas of the Earth's surface are now uninhabitable. Only several 100,000 were able to evacuate Earth, being cryogenically frozen on what were called lifeboats. When civilization collapsed, what was left of the governments, bureaucrats, and military leaders convened under the flag of the Allied Nations, becoming all that remained of the rule of law, and this formed a single world government. They formed the ARC, the ARC, or the Armored Response Coalition. This was set up in order to try and combat the Hell invasion by using, Argent-powered technology, and this was overseen by Dr. Samuel Hayden. So after the Slayer messed up their means of producing Argent Energy, and after Dr. Hayden sent the Slayer to the Void, the loss of Argent Energy brought chaos to Earth as the energy grid simply collapsed. He brought the Crucible before the Allied Nations Council, telling them that this was the answer. He would use the Crucible as an Argent conductor, and this would create a synthetic, man-made Argent Energy, and Hayden would become a sort of mythical figure to the remaining people on Earth. He also became the lead director of the ARC, getting full command over all of the resistance effort carried out by the ARC. He repurposed all of the UAC facilities that were on Earth, and these were largely unaffected by the invasion because of their remote locations and high-powered defenses. One of these was the Mobile Command Carrier, which could carry out long-range strike ops, and was ARC HQ, with the main focus being to shut down Hell portals, to destroy new Hell growths appearing on the planet, and therefore closing the gate between dimensions. Operation Hellbreaker would be Hayden's final plan as the lead director, as this plan failed quite spectacularly. Hearing the screams of people on Earth being killed by demons, the Slayer steps through the gate on the Fortress of Doom and emerges on a Hell barge. Fighting through the barge, the Slayer confronts the first of the three Hell Priests, Deag Nilox. Nylox tells him that his soul remains guarded, but the Slayer holds up a token with the Sentinel emblem on and beheads Deag Nylox. The temple is then discarded by the Titan, and the Slayer disembarks. The Titan then walks away as if aimless. Vega says that the demonic consumption of Earth has now been reduced by 36.8% on account of Deag Nylox's death, but that 2 Hell Priests remain. He needs to interrupt the Deagic Council where the other 2 priests are waiting. To do this, he needs to board the Citadel. Fighting across the ruined Earth, the Slayer finds the portal into the demonic Citadel. Entering, the Slayer comes face to face with the other priests.
How can this be? No man can pass through the gate. It is... This stops nothing. The sacrament of this world to the great Khan Maker will be made, and the energy will be restored once again. As it is written, from the souls of the non-believers. You will not save them from their judgment.
You go too far this time. You cannot interfere. This is humanity's chance to repent, to give service to us. You cannot resist the will of the Khan Maker.
Activating the portal now.
For it was you who was meant to enforce it.
Back on the ship, Vega states that in order to find the second Hell Priest, the Slayer will need a component for his celestial locator. Thankfully, he will be able to find one in the Argent city of Exultia. Exultia is actually a sister city to another Argenta city we've seen called Kantoth, which is where the barracks and the Drakhelm, the Dragon's Den, was. Going through the portal, the Slayer is now in Exultia. Then Atlan stands mid-combat against a Titan and this place is deserted. Locating the chamber of King Novik, who has long since passed, the Slayer approaches King Novik's spirit and kneels before him, still showing respect and fealty to him. Novik says the Slayer should give up, as Earth is no longer his to save. Novik warns the Slayer about the nature of the priests and that he cannot kill them, as they still have Sentinel blood, and that if he continues he will bring down the Heaven's wrath, but the Slayer doesn't listen and takes the celestial casing. Leaving the forsaken city of Exultia, the Slayer heads through the trans-dimensional portal and into Hell, where he is greeted by a load of old pals. After he's finished them off, he locates a power core needed to power up the locator. In finding it, he meets the Betrayer.
I told you all to leave me here. I am where I belong. Saving your people will not bring you peace. Only make the burden you carry worse. And now you seek to defy the Khan Maker herself. It is your people's time now to give penance, just as it was mine. Hear me, Slayer. When his heart is laid to rest, then his soul will be at peace. And so will mine.
After a long fight, the Slayer finally manages to leave Hell and gets to the exit portal, and is now back on the Fortress of Doom. He activates the Celestial Locator, and they track the second Hell Priest to a cultist base in the Arctic. After relaxing by playing his favourite video game, the Slayer arrives on the outskirts of the cultist base. Deag Ranak is the overseer of this facility, and Ranak actually worked with Olivia Pierce at the Mars facility, albeit briefly, before returning to Earth. The base itself is built on top of an Argenta Earth settlement. Anyway, the Slayer scales the cliffside and the rocks and arrives, making his way into the base, where inevitably he is met by demons and he has to fight them off. Continuing on through the base, the Slayer cleanses it of the demonic corruption and retrieves his super shotgun. Heading down to a chamber, a projection of Ranak says that he does not fear the Slayer, and to come find him. Clearing out another wave of the demons, the Slayer then boards a train which heads for the Doom Hunter base. Right, the Doom Hunter base. Earlier, I mentioned that the Argenta constructed a settlement where the cultist base was. Well, that was around 60 million years ago, and frozen carcasses of beasts that used to roam Earth were found, and they were dated back 80 million years. Cultists at the cultist base studied the creatures and discovered their potential for resurrection and augmentation. These creatures are Argent hunters, which of course the Doomslayer is all too familiar with since he drove them to extinction back in the Argenta Dark Ages and all. Fighting the demons aboard the train, the Slayer eventually arrives at the Doomhunter base, and he travels through the various areas inside. The projection of Deag Ranak appears again, telling the Slayer it wasn't easy to find an opponent worthy of him. I think you can see where this is going. Further on, we do. Ranak is attempting to resurrect one of these former Argent hunters, now Doom hunters, to be his champion in the hope that it will defeat and kill the Slayer in battle. Doom hunters were genetically created by the Hell Priests to battle the Doom Slayer. They are reported to have attacked the Sentinel armies of the North during the Argenta Civil War, and the UAC cultists have since worked to further update and upgrade these hunters into better Doom hunters. Seeing the various construction stages throughout the facility, the Doom Hunter and the Slayer do battle, and the Slayer comes out on top. This is bad news for the Hell Priest.
The beast, does he not seek enhanced power? Gifts to aid him in his noble conquest, perhaps in return for my...
On the ship again, a projection of the Khan Maykr appears, and she says that she's moved the final Hell Priest, Dear Grav, to a secret location. But Vega notices an increase in demonic activity at a Super Gore nest, so the Slayer heads through the portal. Travelling to the Super Gore nest, the Slayer gets to work in destroying it. These are totem-like nests, which seem to pop up at random, but that emit powerful electromagnetic frequencies that result in hell portals appearing. This Super Gore nest, which is located somewhere around Central Europe, is where the invasion began, and the nest appears to be attached to a UAC facility. It's not too hard to believe, since the UAC had already been compromised by cultists. Inside this facility is the Lock reactor. The nest has been built around the reactor, but anyway, the Slayer manages to get rid of it by destroying the heart of the nest. With the reactor overloading, the Slayer needs to get out of there and into an exit portal that Vega has opened, and fast. The Slayer makes it to the portal, and the Super Gore nest, the site of Ground Zero, is destroyed. Unfortunately though, the Slayer was not able to find the final Hell Priest's location. Vega does however come up with another option. After his final operation, Hellbreaker, Dr. Hayden was, let's just say, damaged. Vega suggests getting his help. So Vega opens up a portal to the Ark command station. Arriving at the Ark complex, which was once the headquarters of the Resistance, the Slayer finds it, quite unsurprisingly, overwhelmed by the demonic. One interesting thing in this facility are the research notes of Dr. Elena Richardson. Her observations of the Slayer's blood samples after he was taken from his sarcophagus are here in the facility, and are quite interesting.
This is Dr. Elena Richardson, log entry 002. Subject analysis of Doomslayer, January 24th, 2163. There is no chance that the subject is a demon. We have blood samples pulled from the Mars base event that show his blood type is AB positive. He is male with a genome that makes him very much a member of the human race. But the enhanced strength, speed, and athleticism would indicate otherwise. But we can see from the blood samples that there are foreign bodies present of unknown origin.
What she's saying is that the Slayer's blood contains strange foreign bodies, likely from the divinity machine which gave him his increased strength and speed. Clearing out the corruption in the UAC complex and using 2 massive cannons to destroy 2 tentacles, the Slayer gains access to the outpost where Dr. Hayden is, and after fighting a load more demons, the Slayer arrives at Hayden's location.
My God, Dr. Hayden was convinced that you would come here for this, eventually. Can I just say that it is an honor for me, personally, to meet you?
Attention. Emergency protocols have been activated. Please exit the facility now.
We don't know how to access his main cortex. It's all alien. We couldn't figure it out. We have to prepare for his careful extraction. We were given specific orders.
His life signal is barely readable.
Warning. Demonic presence threat level 5 entering main laboratory.
Opening the portal now.
One of us. You were nothing but a usurper, a false idol. My eyes have been opened. Let me help you to see, Slayer.
You may have noticed that the Marauder called the Slayer a usurper. Basically, remember the civil war in Argent D'Nur? While the members of the Ascended Empire, who you'll recall were loyal to the Maykrs, who fell in battle during the Civil War, were placed into the divinity machine by the Maykrs and were resurrected and turned into these Marauders. Fighting the Marauder, who is pretty tough, the Slayer manages to defeat it. Returning through the portal, the Slayer is now back on the ship again. Vega says that the Slayer has destroyed 60% of Hell's occupying force. He throws Samuel Hayden into a contraption which transfers his consciousness into the ship's mainframe. Hayden then says that the final Hell Priest is hiding in Sentinel Prime, and that the only functional gate to Sentinel Prime is located at the core of Mars in the lost city of Herbeth. With Hayden saying that there are no known ways to get there, the Slayer uncovers something about a large weapon, the BFG-10,000.
The BFG-10,000, designed by Dr. Samuel Hayden as part of the anti-demonic defense grid.
I understand. Searching the coordinates to the BFG-10,000 now.
You can't just shoot a hole into the surface of Mars.
Heading through the portal, the Slayer is now at the Mars core. The place is under heavy assault by the demons, and the Slayer fights his way to the energy source for the weapon.
That control pod contains the energy source of the BFG-10,000. I'm lowering it for you now.
I need you to...
Warning. Mars surface targeted. Safety mechanism.
Would you like me to disable the safety protocols? The pod is set to self-destruct. You should move ahead.
Danger. All personnel evacuate to Mars surface. The Slayer has control.
After literally having shot a hole into the surface of Mars, the Slayer platforms his way over on pieces of the Mars UAC base and eventually reaches the Ion Catapult, where he launches himself as the ammunition, and reaching an escape pod, he finally manages to get to the lost city of Herbeth. Hayden says the lost city of Herbeth was lost way before the Slayer's time with the Sentinels, and reminds him that the slipgate here will take him to Sentinel Prime. Herbeth itself was once a prosperous port city, home to the Bethian clan of the Outer Worlds. It was a place that bridged the Sentinel cities through the slipgates until it was lost during the Crusades of the Sentinels and was swallowed up by the surface of Mars. Fighting his way to the slipgate, the Slayer heads through it. Arriving, the Slayer is allowed through by the Night Sentinels still loyal to the Maykrs, but the statues of the Maykrs in these halls still stand tall. One of the Maykrs welcomes the Slayer home. The Night Sentinels are still doing their duty and guarding the priest, as he is still, like King Novik said, of Sentinel blood and cannot be killed, not without invoking Heaven's wrath. The Slayer spots the blood arena in the distance, the place where he was taken all that time ago, to fight and where he proved his worth to the Sentinels. The arena itself, since the region has assimilated with the Dark Realm, has been used by the priests to match up armed captives against the demons for nothing more than sport. The priests still hold power on the planet of Argent D'Nur. Killing the Deag here would be a big thing, as the transgressor, therefore the Slayer, would end up being banished. The Khan Maykr also appears, trying to convince the Slayer to turn back. She even promises to return what he lost to the demons all those years ago, if he spares Deag Grav. She then appears again and says that she has a world to save, her own of course, and that without the human souls there is no hell energy. Entering the Colosseum, the Slayer speaks with Deag Grav. He, like Deag Ranak, has a champion, a guardian, and this is the Gladiator. He is an executioner, and his shield contains the tormented soul of his undying master, and he's undefeated, although that's about to change as the Slayer quickly dispatches him. The priest then appears and then chats some more nonsense, with the Slayer blowing his head off with a super shotgun. The Slayer has committed a treasonous act on Sentinel soil, and the Night Sentinels enter, spears raised. The Slayer has no desire to fight those he still respects, and steps through the portal. With the Slayer now officially banished from Argent D'Nur, like that's going to stop him, he arrives back on the ship. Back on the Fortress of Doom, the Khan Maykr is not happy and has attempted to corrupt the ship's systems as revenge for killing the last Hell Priest. She knows the ship's systems well since it's powered by Maykr technology. She says that now the blood ritual has been stopped, she has no choice now but to use the Icon of Sin, and he will devour the Earth, leaving it in ruins. Killing the demons she tries to flood the ship with, the Slayer and Vega regain control, and the Slayer restores power by using the Crucible, which is a source of Argent energy. Naturally, Hayden finds this funny, given that the Slayers tried so hard to destroy that energy source back on Mars. Anyway, Vega says that the demonic corruption of Earth has been stopped, but the threat that the Icon of Sin is to be used is a very serious one, and the Slayer needs a blade for a crucible in order to slay the Icon of Sin. Thankfully, the Slayer left one in the Dreadnought he brought down in Taraznabad, so Vega opens up a portal. Coming out in Taraznabad, the Slayer finds his way into the city, which again has fallen to the demonic corruption. Cleansing it, the Slayer then comes across the Divinity Machine, which, remember, is where Samo Maykr placed him, and where he became and where he received his superhuman abilities. The Slayer then comes across the Dreadnought, blade still embedded, and he grabs the crucible handle, snapping it off the blade, therefore this prevents the Dreadnought from returning. The handle in his possession, the Slayer moves forward and finds a circular stone that absorbs itself into the hilt, along with a pool of strange liquid. But this isn't just some liquid, this is Wraithfire, also known as Sentinel Energy. Dipping the handle into the Wraithfire forges the blade anew. After testing out the reforged Crucible sword, which is extremely powerful, the Slayer returns to the Fortress of Doom and sets out for Necrovol, as in order to get to the Maker's world of Urdak, he will need to pass through the Soul Factory. What's more is that once in Urdak, the Slayer has no means of leaving, so he will need to take Vega with him so that the AI can open up a portal for him. So after Vega has transferred himself to an external drive, the Slayer arrives in Hell at the entrance to Necrovol. Battling his way through this torture factory, the Slayer soon meets the one known as the Sightless Judge, Calibas, who judges cages full of human bodies and determines which ones are suitable for the Argent Energy process. He has eyes that pop up and fire balls of energy at the Slayer, but taking them out and giving Calibas a good slap, the Sightless Judge is dead, and the Slayer can now proceed. Eventually, the Slayer reaches the Citadel, the location of the soul extraction chamber, and the beam of energy being sent straight into Urdak. Ascending the Citadel and reaching the top of the spire, the Slayer sees that this is where the processed souls are converted into Argent Energy and sent up to Urdak. This is one of many soul spires, but the only one that is linked directly to Urdak, with the other ones linked directly to Argent D'Nur. After defeating a load more demons who are defending the contraption, the Slayer ascends further and arrives at the Continuum Gate, where a lot more demons are waiting to be killed. After dispatching them all, the Slayer opens the gate and rides the stream of Argent Energy straight into Urdak. Having arrived in Urdak, the Slayer wastes no time in interrupting the Maykrs in their resurrecting of the Icon of Sin, now adorned with Maykr armor. Commander Valen's son, Marok's Heart, is in there, and pulling out the knife the betrayer gave to him, the Doomslayer destroys the heart, thereby freeing Marok's tormented spirit. This is very catastrophic for the Maykrs, as they will no longer be able to control the Icon, which has now been awakened. Before it leaves through a portal to Earth, the Icon of Sin corrupts the Maykr drones and they get turned into blood makers. The whole of Urdak is now hostile towards the Slayer, but that's not all. The Icon of Sin has also broken the barrier between Urdak and Hell, and now the demons have invaded there too. Fighting his way through Urdak against Maykrs and the demons, the next thing he needs to do is reactivate the gate and get back to Earth to stop the Icon of Sin. This is what the Slayer brought Vega along for. Inserting Vega into the console, Vega says something very interesting.
System acquired. Setting a course for the Earth dimension now.
I can't see now. Am I the Father apprehended?
The Slayer aligns 3 celestial rings, and battling his way to the landing platform, the Slayer is confronted by a very annoyed Khan Maykr.
For millennia we have survived, made others sacrifice in the name of our prosperity, so that they may in turn find redemption. Who are you? A human, once a mortal, to defy our traditions.
Fighting the Khan Maykr and her loyal Maykr angels and drones, the Slayer defeats her.
You have destroyed all that I was meant to rule, and all just to protect them. Here, servants to our beliefs. You have broken the holy seal of Urdak. Your transgressions here will jeopardize all of my nation.
Now back on Earth, the Slayer spots the Icon of Sin strolling round Earth. Fighting his way through an unimaginable amount of demons, the Slayer follows the Icon and eventually fights it, destroying all the parts of its body armor. Afterwards, after it's walked away, a final showdown takes place, and the Slayer, whilst battling against many demons, finally inflicts enough damage in order to stun the beast, and jumping up to his head, he buries the crucible blade inside its brain, killing it. With the invasion of Earth stopped, you'd think that's it, but the triumphant Doomslayer is not done yet, as there's still work to do. Saving Earth had come at a great cost, as the death of the Khan Maykr and Hell's demons having invaded Urdak has only strengthened the demons' goals of taking over other dimensions, and this puts Earth at risk of being invaded again, so they must be banished. The Slayer and Samuel Hayden decide they need to journey to find the Seraphim, Samir Maykr, as he is the one who will know how to seal Urdak off from the demons. They've teamed up with the Armored Response Coalition, and aboard the Ark carrier, the intern who was present at the Ark complex and his colleague mentioned being able to teleport the Slayer onto the main deck of a rig called the Atlantica facility, a facility belonging to the UAC. This facility was built on request of Dr. Hayden in order to monitor the climate when Earth was in the midst of their energy crisis. Arriving on the rig's helipad, the Slayer fights through the rig facility and its platforms, and eventually he reaches the key to the Seraphim's chamber.
Yes, the key to the Seraphim's chamber. Now, we work to resurrect the only ones who can save this world and its people.
Warning, the Seraphim's chamber key has been removed. The Slayer has the key. This facility will self-destruct in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Goodbye.
Moving on further and entering a secret part of the facility hidden on the seabed, the Slayer eventually reaches the Seraphim's body, which has been in stasis.
He is the one who gave you your power. It was divine intervention. I am going to transfer my consciousness into the device as Vega did. I am here to help you, as I have always. And now, they will fear you. We have been allies for some time now. I knew who you were the moment you set foot in our world, and who you could become to us. I brought you to the Divinity Machine and gave you your power. Where would all of this be now had I not had the foresight to create you? Your gifts are owed to us now. Repay the Father for all he has granted us both by returning him to his throne, and then he will save us all.
After this, back on the carrier, the intern tells the Slayer that Dr. Hayden is Samo Maykr. Basically, after the Seraphim, Samo Maykr, placed the Doomslayer inside the Divinity Machine, he was exiled and was sent to Earth by the Khan Maykr as punishment for what he'd done. He created a cloned human body for himself, and he then transferred his consciousness to it, also creating that elaborate backstory we heard earlier. Of course, he got brain cancer and transferred his consciousness again to the 3-meter tall mech body. This meant immortality, and because Maykrs were physically unable to enter the Hell dimension, this is the reason that Dr. Hayden, or Samo Maykr, was able to venture into Hell. It was at this time that Dr. Hayden created the AI Vega out of the Father's consciousness, separating the Father from his divine essence using Maykr technology, although Vega wouldn't know he was the Father until he was inserted into the systems in Urdak. The Father, before he'd been programmed into Vega, had previously given Hayden a mission to guide the humans of Earth to discover and produce Argent Energy, in order to prepare them for the upcoming invasion of Earth. When on Earth, that's when he had his Seraphim body kept in a secret facility on the ocean floor underneath the Atlantica facility. Having helped stop the invasion of Earth, that leads us back to this moment. The Ark researchers say that there's something wrong with the Seraphim though, and he tells the Slayer about the Father's life sphere and its location. The Ingmor's Sanctum, which as explained earlier is located above the blood swamps of Hell. Samo is undergoing the transfiguration and he needs the Father. He asks the Slayer to reach the tomb and to bring the Father's life sphere back to physical form, and this will stop the transfiguration. Of course, Samo cannot go with the Slayer because with him back in his Maykr form, he is not able to travel into the Hell dimension. Samo says that he will meet the Slayer at the Sanctum. The Slayer then prepares to leave for the blood swamps. The blood swamps are where the discarded souls from Necrovol end up, the ones that were unfit for the Argent Energy process, so this place is full of tortured souls. According to the lamentations of the Seraphs, the blood swamps used to be called the Pleasure Lakes before Jakad became Hell. Further into the blood swamps, the Slayer is forced to undertake the 3 trials of Malagog, a huge titan who guards the life spheres in the Ingmor's Sanctum. These are trials that many a warrior has attempted in an attempt to meet with the Father, but many have failed. After the tough battles against the demons, Malagog deems the Slayer worthy, so he lifts him up to the Sanctum.
Hurry, retrieve the Father's soul sphere. He will save Urdak from the demons. For the humans' sake, do it now.
This is the Dark Lord's life sphere. He'll take physical form if you do this.
Returning to the carrier through the portal, everyone freaks out when they see the Slayer carrying the Dark Lord's life sphere. Except for the intern, however, who instantly knows the Slayer wants to take the sphere to Urdak. Destroying the Dark Lord in his physical form will destroy all the demons too, so the Slayer heads through the portal and arrives in the Equestrian Halt. This place, as mentioned earlier in the video, was a place where the Maykrs would come to meditate before meeting and speaking with the Father, but after the Icon of Sin was resurrected by the Khan Maker, the place has also been corrupted and it's dying. Passing through it and fighting the numerous demons that have made themselves at home, along with blood makers and drones, the Slayer, on his way to the Luminarium, hears the voice of the Father.
It is clear that I am what was known as the Father. While I have indefinite access and understanding of this world's systems, I lack the control over them necessary to remove the demons and reseal the void. Without a physical form, I am merely a presence. I have no recollection of myself. I believe my essence from the sphere could return me to my full faculties.
The intern surmises that the Father has no idea what happened in the swamp, and that his life sphere has been destroyed, and that he thinks the Slayer is there to help him. Before he can make it to the Luminarium, he is confronted by Samur. He is in pretty bad shape as a result of the transfiguration, and he duly transforms into a grotesque abomination, and he and the Slayer do battle. The Slayer defeats Samur. The Father's voice speaks up again, and Samur is taken somewhere by the Father before the Slayer can finish him off. The Slayer moves into the Luminarium. Because he holds a life sphere on him, the Slayer can pass into the Luminarium, having earned the right after making it through the blood swamps of hell.
The consequences of your actions here are irreversible. Among them, as only the strongest could rule the demons. It is you, in their world.
Firing a shot at the Dark Lord called Davoth, remember? This fails, as in line with Maker law, no blood can be spilled inside the Luminarium. Davoth does say though that the Slayer's time will come, and that if he can survive, he will face him at the Hell City of Emora. He then walks away through a portal, back to Hell. The Slayer then steps through a portal and into the steppes, on Argent D'Nur, the location where the cosmic or world spear landed on the planet. The Father speaks up and says that in order to get to Emora, the Slayer needs to retrieve a Wraith Crystal in order to power up the Gate of Devum. Fighting the demons there on Argent D'Nur, the Slayer meets a hologram of Commander Valen, who hands him a Sentinel Hammer, a powerful weapon. He says that he's atoning for his sins, and he thanks the Slayer for lifting his son's curse. The Slayer makes it to and lights the Torch of Kings. This is an act forbidden by the Maykrs that basically lets the Sentinel tribes know that he wants a Wraith Crystal and allows a warrior passage to the World Spear.
priests forbid the use of this beacon. If there are any remaining free tribes left in Argent D'Nur, all will see this light and know what your mission is here.
We are still a day's walk away from the World Sphere.
The Slayer is dropped off at the World Sphere and comes to the Nether Lake. The Father's voice speaks and says that the Slayer is worthy, and a bridge is raised with the Slayer crossing it to the World Sphere itself. The gatekeepers of the World Sphere allow him through, and the Slayer discovers that the World Sphere is actually a giant ship from the cosmic realm, and it's filled with pods containing the Wraiths, so this explains where they all poured out from after the World Sphere pierced the planet. Moving through the ship, the Slayer retrieves the Wraith Crystal. The intern then says that he has the location at the Gate of D'Nur locked in. This leads the Slayer back to reclaimed Earth. Essentially, the Armored Response Coalition, the human resistance, have retaken the planet, and the Gate of D'Nur is somewhere here in the midst of an overgrown city. The city has come to view the Slayer as a sort of savior. He has inspired pockets of resistance to fight back against the demons. They offer prayers for his victory, spreading his mark wherever they can. Battling through the reclaimed Earth, the Slayer gets to an old abandoned UAC facility and sees the unpowered Gate of D'Nur. The Slayer uses the Wraith Crystal to power the gate and makes his way through to the Hell City of Amora.
Let hell tremble before our might!
With the Sentinel forces of Argent D'Nur occupying the majority of the Dark Lord's forces, the Slayer moves around the edge of the city walls and hops onto a ballista, firing himself through a weakened part of the wall. Walking through the city, the architecture of this place looks very Maykrish. The Slayer battles his way through all the demons trying to stop him, including many demonic troopers, forces loyal to Davoth who have been waiting eons for his return. Making his way into the Dark Lord's sanctum, the Slayer confronts him and he's in for a history lesson.
You bring violence and war to thwart the Dark Realm, but conflict was born in Hell. It is inevitable. A fire that fuels creation and gives purpose where there is none. For too long have I been imprisoned by my own creations. You will not stop my vengeance, nor the one who betrayed me. Tell him.
He is the first being, and my creator. When he fell, I ascended.
They lied to you, Slayer. Imora and its people would have been perfect, if not for the treachery of my servants. They sealed me away, stole my power and name. And now, the time has come for a reckoning. As all things were made by my hand, so shall they be unmade, starting with you.
So when Jakad was created, it was a single dimension that connects to all other ones. The Maykrs' story of Davoth wanting immortality for his people was true, but the actual story is that he created the Maykrs in order to find the solution for this. Their hive mind working as a collective in order to make this happen. The Maykrs then discovered the solution to immortality and refused to share this information with Davoth, which then led to the betrayal. The Maykrs were the ones that sealed off Jakad, with Davoth inside it of course, and rewrote their own history to cover up the truth. This is what turned Davoth mad, his hatred consuming him and how Jakad became hell. Then a battle happened, just as the Maykrs said, and the Father, as we knew him, went on to tear the life sphere out of Davoth, keeping it in the Ingmar sanctum. In reality, the Father was just a Maykr himself. Davoth then became devoted to destroying his creation, which was the Maykrs, which included the Father, who he viewed as a usurper. This was to be his vengeance. As mentioned earlier in the video, the Dark Lord would influence both the Khan Maykr herself by corrupting her into forging an alliance with the demons, and to believe that there was someone who would cause a schism within the Night Sentinels, and of course he would influence Sama into the belief that the Khan Maykr was going to destroy the Maykrs. Which leads us to Davoth's plan involving the Slayer. So cultist members of the UAC believe that the creation of the Slayer was guided by the Dark Lord himself. He would be the tool to wreak destruction on the Maykr race. His influence was even more strong to people vulnerable to corruption, which could be why Maykrs are so easy to corrupt, as they are his creation. They have that darkness within them. Maybe this explains their ghastly appearance too. Anyway, the Dark Lord guided the Khan Maykr to create the Divinity Machine, and he led her to his life sphere at the Ingmar sanctum, where she took a shard of the Dark Lord's presence and used it to power the Divinity Machine. This is why, when she placed the Sentinels into the machine, they went mad, and their souls were destroyed. As we know, the Slayer went into the machine and came out superhuman. Now, Davoth saw that the Slayer would be the one to destroy the Maykrs for him once he learned of the Khan Maykrs' deal with the demons. He also knew that they would both meet in battle, and that he would have to kill the Slayer, which leads us back to this very moment. Squaring off in battle, the Slayer and Davoth collide. It's a long battle, but one that the Slayer ultimately wins. Davoth asks if the Slayer has anything he wants to say to his creator, but the Slayer, without flinching, drives his blade into the chest and life sphere of Davoth, simply saying no. With the Dark Lord dead, the demons outside of Hell, around the different dimensions that they had invaded, disappear, and the Slayer drops to his knees and falls unconscious. This is because of his connection to Davoth through the divinity machine. The Seraphs then stood in the Ingmar Sanctum, place him inside a sarcophagus, and he is kept in stasis should he ever be needed again. And the game then ends. One final question we have is, why on earth does Davoth look like the Doomslayer? The lore says that the life sphere being taken to the Luminarium restores one back to their original form. So the question isn't, why does Davoth look like the Doomslayer? It's, why does the Doomslayer look like Davoth? Well, we are also told that both the Slayer and Davoth are both primevals. They are both the champions of protectors of their realms. Remember, the divinity machine had a piece of Davoth in it, and the Slayer ended up looking like the Dark Lord. And that is it for the story of Doom, or the Doomslayer, so far. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Doom lore, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you like these kind of videos, then I've done ones on the entire Bioshock, Gears, Mafia, Hitman, Dead Rising, and Metal Gear series too, so go and check those ones out if you haven't already. Leave a comment below with your thoughts, but for now, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.